So, yet another day of making friends, was it? Myriad asked in naked sarcasm when Ben arrived in his realm. Just going out to show how lucky the world and everyone in it is that you live here? You act like I went looking for problems. I didn't start a fight, I just finished it. Which in turn can create plenty of different problems. You do realize that, don't you? Sure. But what was I supposed to do? I wasn't just going to let them stick around to force their beliefs on me. You have me. You were supposed to come tell me, and then I would have sorted it out. Sure, yeah. But that would have been boring. Boring dash. Plus, Ben went on before his god could get too upset. Neither the existence of my skill nor my desire to get paid breaks any laws. Promising to harass me into following their beliefs does. I tell you, and then what? Their gods tell them to stop, and that's it? The same gods that basically drove them to it by complaining about me to their believers? That's not even a slap on the wrist. And all of the photos lying around the magic towers that seem to have appeared after we noticed what was happening up here? Photos? No clue what you're talking about. Ben lied, his god not believing him for a second. Anyway, what happened up here as a result? Ugh, what happened is you got lucky. Since they were in the wrong, as unhappy as some were with the way you chose to handle things, it was decided that they actually needed to face some punishment since it would set a bad precedent for other faiths to gang up on one to try and make them conform to their beliefs beyond the scope of the law. You won't have to go back tomorrow, since it was non-violent. They'll be doing a couple weeks each of community service and have been told not to contact you again. Wait, genuinely? Man, gonna be honest, I was expecting I was actually gonna have to either throw up a fuss or get my own revenge by breaking their legs or something. Psycho. Hey, considering how little happened with Olencia's oracle, can you blame me? Having him put to death would have been infinitely more complicated for everyone than giving these ones some community service. Sure, but that last bastard decided to have me and Sakhel straight up killed. No, he was just trying to drastically increase your odds of dying. That's not better. Well, if you're not satisfied then at least wait for after the war's done to get your revenge. Myriad sighed, saying it offhand without much thought and regretting it the instant he did as Ben perked up. Wait, no. That's not what I meant. Too late. I officially have divine approval to kill that guy. Oh, I'm so excited. Now that's what I call some extra motivation to survive all of this. Don't use that as motivation and no murders. That prick tried to kill me. Fair is fair. Have you never heard of a little thing called forgiveness? Yeah, and it applies to people who, once again, haven't tried to get me killed. I'll have you know that I'm perfectly capable of forgiving the idiots who'd come to bother me today now that I know they're actually being punished for it. It's when this sort of stuff gets brushed off for the gods' convenience that loses any chance of peace. Ugh, empty skies. Please no murders. You can even go and ruin his life in some other way if you really want to. Just don't kill the guy. Deal. I don't like how fast you agreed to that. No take-backsies. I've already started planning. I think the best choice would be to convert all of Olencia's believers away to leave his church destitute so his oracle can't get paid, and well, if that doesn't seem like enough, I'll go from there. A case of content theft. This narrative is not rightfully on Amazon. If you spot it, report the violation. Atheism or me? You first, atheism for the rest. That works, Myriad nodded, having few qualms about it if the goal was to get him more believers and not draw any blood in the process. But are you really only motivated to get me believers when it's for revenge? I mean, I slap your name on everything. That's basically passive. Work smarter, not harder, right? I'd prefer you do both. I'm pretty comfortable saying I get you more faith than Sakhel and Valeria combined. If you're not satisfied, it's really them you should be complaining to. They're both good people who try their best for me. I could never. Feel like there was a hurtful implication or two in there. I'm pretty sure you've specifically said before that at most, you try your okayest. Yeah, and look at just how good that is. Ugh, you're impossible. I'm sweet like candy. Now, was there anything else I need to be worried about? Any more jerks going to come bother me because of my innocent little awakening? You know, even if I'm on your side, being named an evil god really is a bad look. So not the point. No, there's nothing, Myriad sighed. At least nothing bad. There was something I wanted to talk to you about on a related note though. Okay, hit me. It's clear that even without either of our intervention, word's going to spread about your awakening, and seeing as that's the case, I wanted to see how you'd feel about properly announcing your ascension to Eldritch Mind. MMH. Sounds like a pain in the ass. It's clearly already a pain in the ass, but word about a new third tier is going to get out whether you like it or not. It's the sort of thing that can give people hope, and just as importantly, it can be a point of pride. I don't want to go and announce it to the entire world on your behalf, but I would like to tell my other believers. You saw how Nair's people celebrated your teacher's ascension, right? It's an achievement the rest of my faithful would love to hear, and would be uplifting news for them in a time like this. Better than them hearing it through whatever distorted rumors are going around, and just as importantly, despite your personality, you're quite popular within the church for all you do. I feel like you didn't need to add that bit about my personality. You know what I mean. So what do you say? Fine, he sighed. Tell them, but at least tell the demi-demons to keep it a secret. I don't want word getting out around town. I guess this would be a good excuse to get a little gathering together too, so tell them all tonight, and then we can all meet up in Analia tomorrow, at least with anyone close enough. I know it's short notice, but you're their god. I'm sure most of them can make it work. Ooh, gonna cater? No, if I'm helping to raise the skills of every person on the planet I pass, then I should get your believers done at least, and more importantly, if they're all in my range, then I can try to force them all up a few more connect levels. Hell, so long as they don't quit too soon, then maybe we can even manage a few more awakenings, or get them to the 9th level, I suppose. If I'm awakening anyone, I'm modifying their soul first, and that's not happening yet. Or you could not do that. No, I really need to see if the degree I can help people with leveling connect has grown at all now that my mind has changed so much, so they all need to suffer through that. Tell Sakhel and the demi-demons to meet me at the shop at the end of the day, and for everyone else to be waiting in your church in Analia for us to arrive. Get Valeria to go out to the gate network and hand out resistance amulets if necessary. And now I immediately regret this, the cube groaned. My people don't deserve the sort of treatment you'll be putting them through. Trying to turn them into second tiers? Traumatizing them. Think of it from this perspective. If the majority of your people are second tiers, there's got to be some bragging rights for you about that, doesn't there? Not if you break them all to get there. Look, I'm probably not even going to awaken any, so don't worry. And if it looks like I can, well, then they'll just have to participate when I get to soul modifying so they can reap all of the rewards. Oh, infinite hells. That's coming up soon too. Isn't it? Yeah, and I'm way behind where I wanted to be for it. Ben sighed and rubbed his face, thinking about how little time he had left for the achievements he wanted, while Myriad watched in disbelief. What more could you possibly be hoping for? At least one more third-tier skill for the growth bonuses? Well, if you end up succeeding, make sure you let me know. Do you actually have any ideas on how you'd even get there? A few, but none of them are working yet. It's fine. It's a barrier that needs to be chipped away at, and I'm chipping every single day. It's possible. It just hasn't worked yet. But that didn't matter. He could do it. At worst, it would just take time. Time I don't have. He complained, feeling the weight of the accomplishments he needed with them all still just out of reach. Man, what I wouldn't give for some other way of getting there. Running on all fours, feeling his feet pound as his claws dug into the dirt with each step. The only things filling Faust's mind were hunger and rage as he tracked his prey. His nose not letting them escape even as they took to the air. Wings flapping far above him, yet still giving off their scent and losing ground to him every second. A fact they were well aware of too. His pursuit was endless and his target's fate sealed. Even if they insisted on fighting back right to the end, as it finally landed to face him, its flesh warping before his eyes to take the shape of an Amarok. The wolf bigger than him but inferior, as its lunge only brought it into his jaws, feeling flesh tear away and fill his mouth before it changed again. A giant snake now wrapped around him and crushing down before it felt the bite of his sharp claws, driving it to another attempt, and another from there as its form continued to change. Mammal, reptile, birds, and other things that defied classification, one by one, each form his prey attempted failed in favor of his own, killing each beast it took on as he ate away at it, lowering its numbers until only one remained. A biped, it held few strengths but nothing compared to other shapes. Its teeth and claws negligible as it lashed out in one last desperate attempt for survival and failing even at the end, having its throat torn through as he was able to stare down at it in proper for the first time. The thrill of victory changing to abject horror as he saw the thing he'd worked so hard to kill wearing his own face. With a gasp, Faust shot up from where he'd rested, his mattress a mess of rips and sweat that he didn't even notice as he tried to collect himself, clutching at his chest as he did, forcing himself to calm down until both his heart rate and breathing slowed. I'm not sure if the potions are really worth it, he thought while he rubbed the last bit of sleep from his eyes, the morning sun telling him that he'd at least rested through the night. But was that rest worth the horrors that came to him in his dreams? He'd feel better throughout the day for it, but the nights were all the worse for not being able to escape the things his mind kept subjecting him to. Maybe just when I'm being sent off then, he muttered to himself. He needed to be at his peak performance when it came to whatever task the gods of the world had for him, but outside of that, some sleep deprivation wouldn't kill him. He could balance the two based on his needs and deal with the harm of both sides. Since he was up, though, he needed to make sure to take advantage of the night's rest he'd just gotten, which means off to work. He slipped into the armor he'd had made, feeling comforted by the way it pressed against his flesh while he went out, making a mental note that he'd need to get some new bedding again and would likely be best off buying it in bulk if his night shifting was going to get worse, and then making another that if he was going to take a new lover anytime soon, he'd need to make sure he had a potion the night before any rendezvous to keep himself from falling asleep around them with that getting worse. Or just not take any new lovers at all. He forced himself to admit, acknowledging the best choice no matter how it felt. Gods above, what a depressing thought when the world's ending. If I keep my trysts to the middle of the day when I'm not already scheduled for something, no responsibility and all of that. Better to be a little lonely rather than an accidental murderer. Unauthorized duplication. This narrative has been taken without consent. Report sightings. An equally depressing thought as it would be to spend the night alone, yet the responsible one. It couldn't help but ruin his mood the entire way to the communal church, showing on his face as he went inside. Well, don't you look like you've had a bad day? The waiting priest laughed. Lady Trouble, I take it? The opposite, Peak. Don't worry about it and just fill me in. Any new updates for me before I head out to hunt? Nothing from the gods that I've been made aware of. You're hunting a suspected contender in the Untamed Lands. I'll mark the most recent sightings for you. Infinite hells, he muttered as he took a seat to look at the map he was given. Who allowed an invader this powerful anywhere near this planet? Someone was always going to get these interesting times. It just ended up being us. And no news on what the suspected skill they hold is? We'd need survivors for that. We're just working off the destruction that's been found in its wake. If we're lucky, you'll be finding a herd of them instead that are just coordinating unreasonably well. Ha! I'm not sure if I'd be willing to call that luck. A herd can be culled. A beast on the edge of godhood, though. Well, it doesn't matter. I know you'll do your best, so as for your team dash. His mind instantly flashed to the damage he'd done in his sleep and to the boy he'd almost killed the other day for nothing more than having the misfortune of getting too close while he was trying to rest. No team. Faust, I really can't advise that. Even if you were setting me up with a group of second tiers, odds are better than not that they just get in the way. If this is a contender or worse, an invader that's managed to cross that threshold since coming to the world, then I can't be getting distracted trying to protect others. They're going prepared to die, you know that. And I'm not prepared to let them. You won't have to worry. No matter how bad it gets, I'm not being killed. Short of Rook. I was already the hardest to take out, and I've gotten plenty more recently to make it even harder. Not reassuring enough. Then is this? He asked as he rapidly swapped through forms, slapping his chest at the end. Shape-shifting armor, able to stand up to Abel, and that's not even the most I got out of my outing. I got a level. You did? Peak asked, his eyes going wide while the shifter grinned. And it's incredible. When I first reached this tier, I'd thought that there was no reason for the skill to be leveled at all. It already felt beyond perfect, but now. All of the side abilities that came with my shifting seem enhanced significantly, so I'm going to be even harder to kill, and I didn't even realize there was still room to grow, but blending my forms has gotten even easier too. I'm sure I'll be discovering endless little ways I've improved, but even what I've found so far, well, I don't need or want help, and you know you don't have the power to make me stick with anyone I don't want to deal with. But no matter how powerful you are, if you die then I become a god improper. Don't worry. I'm in no rush for that, but I'd prefer not to be held up. Time is of the essence after all. Before Peak could say another word of argument, Faust was already out the door, his form changing to that of a bird to fly to the nearest gate and beyond. He would be fine on his own, and with the untamed lands before him and the power he held, it would only be at most a day before he reached his first destination proper and his investigation could begin. And another 100 done, Ben muttered as more tiles of mana crystal were ensouled, making up the majority of his work for that day. He'd started off by creating more rainbow mana crystal materializers, wanting to have more of the tools at the ready to keep up with his demand for all he'd needed to make. Not just wanting to create holders for souls designed to give faith to both Myriad and Hellori, but himself as well. He was going to be a god one day after all. It would be better for him in the long run if he had some access to the power immediately rather than needing to win over believers and build up a church of his own. With the result of that work being that one of his rings was nearly filled. With all of the power he held and his thought structure letting him improve his materializers, he wasn't short in crystal in the end, and connecting to the countless souls they held to teach them who to worship and how was even easier, taking only a fraction of his thoughts amidst the constant flow of creation that took place. Which means from here, it's tiling Myriad's churches, Hellori's church when I go out to help her, and then either storing mine away or building a church for myself early, and then filling it up, but yeah, I'll just store mine for now. With how much he'd made, meaning the first two goals wouldn't be hard. He already had enough for Hellori, and as for his own god, he'd at least be able to get one branch covered that day and could likely get the Stonewall branch done too, so long as it didn't get too late. He'd still need to work on the All-Faith location in the future, but despite it being the biggest one by far, he was confident it wouldn't be too much work. And with the day just about over, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get started. Abel, you mind walking Delaire home? He asked her through one of his clones, doing his best to guide as she and Delaire finished up on making a sword together, barely getting a glance for his request. Can't she do it herself? Sure, but I'm more comfortable knowing there's someone I can trust going with her, Ben said, instantly brightening the girl for the display of faith. She's my apprentice, so she's my responsibility, but I know I can count on you to look out for her. You got it. Ooh, in that case, stay to play a bit, Delaire told her. You can wait with me till Ben picks you up. I don't need anyone to pick me up. But unlike you two, I'm a respectable adult, she said smugly. Delaire politely not commenting and instead looking back at Ben while he held in his laughter. Abel, if you want to stay with Delaire for a bit, then feel free. I won't be home for a few hours, but Thera and Mora should both be back in maybe one, so just come over whenever you're done. I could beat you in some games while you're here. You aren't beating me in anything short stuff. Just try and I'll happily show you why I'm the best. Have fun now, Ben said as he waved the two off, watching Abel completely lose to Delaire's teasing as they went and leaving him to wait at the shop while the believers slowly made their way over. With the demi-demons looking like they had a secret, the news of Ben's ascension was as exciting as it could be for a group that barely had the proper context to understand it, while both Sakhel and Toltho joined his side. It seems congratulations are in order, Toltho laughed. Never would I have suspected such a thing to even be possible, yet here you stand before me. Would it be proper form to offer you a prayer? Please don't. I'm not actually a god yet, so I can't use the faith. More importantly, you think you guys will be able to actually keep it a secret? He hadn't asked Myriad to place a covenant on them about it like he had to hide their race. Such a thing would definitely be going too far, but he still didn't want word going around town to cause more chaos in their lives, with the other doing his best to reassure him. We're good with our secrets. I don't believe we'll slip up, but to be safe, we've made sure to keep the details for the children slimmer, so there'd be less for them to say. But does it even matter? Sakhel asked him. Enough people in town already think you might be a god. Yeah, but for unrelated reasons. I just don't want to deal with the fallout of having it confirmed. Too many expectations for my taste. I feel like you already have a lot of expectations placed on you, which is why I don't want more. Now come on. He addressed the rest of them. Everyone, put on one of these amulets I'm handing out and don't you dare take them off until we get back and let's go. Stolen novel. Please report. Making sure they'd all be able to resist the charm that flooded Analia. He took them all through the gate to his warehouse and led them all from there, taking the few hundred with him through the streets and drawing eyes for the unusually large crowd of non-succubi as they made their way to their destination, ending up at that city's Church of Myriad where even more waited. It was his first time properly making his way there, and it seemed the Queen hadn't skimped on the production costs she'd provided despite just how few believers his god had had when it was first built. While not as grand as Analia's church or even the communal church in that land, it was large enough to fit nearly 1,000 people thanks to a second row of seats in the ceiling, even if things were going to be tight. He'd been expecting around 400 there, a number that would have covered all of the demi-demons, along with those who'd been compelled to join for the Brace's Myriad's gift skill could help create and a few more on top, but the number was more than double as he counted heads, finding just over 900. And even if it looks like Cheel managed to convert a few more crabs and 2 vampires in the crowd too, who must have converted out of gratitude that they don't have to starve anymore. There's a lot more variety than I'd been expecting, with some obviously missing too. There was no sign of 10th, the friend he'd escaped the demon's world with, nor was he seeing many others of the group he'd brought with him that he knew had converted, but he had arranged that meeting on extremely short notice. It was obvious enough that people would be missing, either too far away or having other things going on that they couldn't skip. His god told him, "Does this mean if I do end up murdering someone in the future, you'll forgive me?" "Ha, sorry. I'll admit, seeing all of this feels good. I wasn't expecting so many. Well then, I'll have to do my best not to scare any of these ones off." He heard his god groan in his head as he went to the front where Valeria waited, giving the priestess a friendly nod as she and Sakhel took his sides, letting him address the crowd while doing his best to project an air of confidence to everyone there. "Hello all. Some of you know me and some I'm only now having the pleasure to see for the first time, but I am Ben, the Apostle of Myriad and the world's newest third tier, the Eldritch Mindholder." Immediate applause from the watching crowd as many stared on in rapture. The news that they all lived in a time when their faith had birthed a new god, something that few would ever get to enjoy and fewer still would get to see in person, but there he was, the one who'd led the majority of them all to converting before them and looking divine in contrast to the problems the world around them faced as he went on. "Without Myriad, I never could have gotten so far. I owe our shared God more than I'd ever be willing to say to his face, but no matter how far any one of us gets, it's important to remember that he loves us all. A fact that I think he consistently proves. How many other gods keep so in touch with their believers? He may be a deity, but I think what really makes him great is the fact that he's a friend as well." And as pleased as he was with my ascension, Ben went on, "What really matters isn't the power but what it means. For a God who loves his believers so dearly, my growth means my safety. Because that's what power is in a world like this, safety from the harms that might come your way, and while this may be a call for all of you to do your best to get whatever levels you can in the time you have for whatever benefits might come from it, it's also something more than that. It's a way for me to pay him back. He may have his own ways of making you all stronger, giving out his skills and blessings, but I have methods too, and I'm going to make sure everyone here gets to benefit from it. So for now, sit back, close your eyes, and try to relax. So long as you're willing to take the growth I can give, I'll make sure you can all get the most from it you can." He moved away from the podium as he said it, walking to the center of the room and floating up just a little above the ground as he stretched out his soul, making sure he pulled every believer into his mind while he looked at the skills they held, giving them all the information they needed to grow them while at the same time getting them to train, putting their connect against different arrangements of his mind to train them and explaining to them all, one-on-one, exactly why he was doing it. Any one of them could quit at any time, but he was a third tier. When he spoke to them about the value of effort and trying despite what a struggle it would be, they made sure to listen as that group training went on. Not even the other core members were free from it, with Valeria happy to participate since she saw it as a chance to raise her already awakened skill even higher, getting plenty of levels to her mental expansion as a side benefit while it progressed, while Sakhel dealt with it to see if anything would come. Her plant magic had absorbed Connect after all, leaving her with a unique variant named Deep Plant Magic, and while she was leveling it unusually well already, there was no denying that practicing that one aspect of her skill could potentially help her get a few more. Depending on how well it works, I could even try raising both Sakhel and Valeria to contenders as well. He thought while his true self got to work, staying in the center of it all to make sure everyone stayed in his range by lifting rows of seated people into the air, while he pulled out soul tiles from his ring to cover the floors before he'd move on to the walls and ceiling. If I keep giving Valeria different arrangements of my mind at greater and greater complexities, then she'll definitely get there. It looks like it might already be possible to awaken her mental expansion too, but we'll make that a project for another day. Let's see, looks like Sakhel is in fact getting some benefits too, so even if it's going to take some time, it should be possible, but, well, if it's something they want, then it's something I can slowly help the two chip away at, and I guess I'll see how the rest of them are going to feel about it too. People would start quitting after they'd gained a level or two. They always would in the end, but he couldn't help but hope that he'd find a few more who'd be willing to stick with it till they got to the 9th. He'd meant what he'd said. More power meant more safety, and there wasn't much more power to be had than to be left on the edge of awakening. When it would come time to start modifying souls too, anyone who he could push beyond the threshold would be there to claim the biggest benefits. Welp, let's just see how this goes first. You doing all right back there, Mora? Thera asked the child she was carrying on her back, getting a mumbled reply. Kind of. You know, if things got too intense for you, you can always slip out of that. Can't feel sick if you don't have a stomach. No, if I'm going to use this, then I need to keep using it to see if it works. I just wasn't prepared for something so bloody. Smelly? The boy gagged, thinking back not to the sight of one patient's large intestine hanging out of a gouge in their side, but instead the odor that filled the room when it ruptured, spilling its contents before any healer could have helped. Why are bodies so disgusting? Just a part of being alive. And speaking of them, how long are you planning on staying in yours? Depends. How long until it's going to reach adulthood? Well, from what Ben's told me, his people are considered adults at 18 and succubi are at 17, but both of those are more cultural than anything else as far as I know. Plus, since you used me to make it, I'm not sure how much my spirit heritage is going to come into play, but your body might basically stop aging when you're done puberty, which, well, is going to be a whole other experience for you if you're planning on sticking out through it. Then I'm going to try to make sure I use it for 8 years without completely leaving. If I can put up with it and age with it, then that should be enough to let me know whether or not thinking with a mortal brain will help me mature. You really don't need to worry so much about that, you know? No, I do. If I can't grow, then I might not be able to mature, and if I can't do that, then I might make a big mistake again. Thera sighed, reaching back to rub his head as she carried him. You would already be considered mature for a 10-year-old, sweetheart, let alone someone less than one, and even if it does help you grow a bit, you're not going to stop making mistakes just because you got older. You can trust me on that. But it's better than not trying. I'm not going to stop you, but tell me, have you been enjoying it? Most of it. There were parts Mora didn't like about living as a mortal. From the more unsavory sensory experiences to the few instances of pain he'd gone through, with stubbing his toe one night already making for a vivid memory. And that wasn't even mentioning chores like eating and sleeping. And yet, through all of that, there were contrasting pleasures too. Pain was dreadful, but a gentler touch was so much richer. Eating was a hassle, but food was delicious. And sleeping was a waste of time, but waking up well-rested after a long day was a whole other pleasure. Even if there were parts he didn't like, the good outweighed the bad to the point that he was planning on sticking with it to prove whether or not it would help him grow and change in the way he'd hoped. Well, most of it is probably how all of us mortals feel about it too, Thera laughed. And for what it's worth, it's nice that you're able to share meals with us now. It has been. Not that he'd be enjoying anything again so soon. The conversation had helped distract him a bit, but less than she'd hoped, getting to hear him hold in his groans by her ear as they finally made it home, finding another figure already waiting outside with a pout on her face. Abel, you didn't go off with Ben? MMH. Church stuff sounded boring, so he asked me to walk Delaire home instead, and she wanted to play while I was there. And I take it you lost? Thera asked, seeing right through the other girl's expression from the defeats she'd suffered within their own household, even if her pout only deepened. Don't want to talk about it. All right, well, I'll let you in already. Come on. She took the middle of the couch, letting Mora curl up on one end beside her to rest his head in her lap while she comforted him. Abel giving the scene a questioning look that Thera answered before she could ask. A bad day at the hospital, she said, keeping it brief. Which means we're also going to have to properly consider if you're still going to come out with me for these things. Do people get used to dealing with gross smells? He mumbled. This tale has been unlawfully lifted without the author's consent. Report any appearances on Amazon. They can. Then I'll keep going. MMH, not sure how I feel about that answer, but it's normally the sites I'd be worried about traumatizing a child, and he seems completely fine with that. All right then, she gave in. But if you start feeling bad for any reason when we're at one, or if you change your mind, just let me know. You can start staying with Ben or else spend time with our family. It won't be a problem. MMH, okay? Good, which just leaves Abel. A far harder subject to deal with. Thera didn't dislike the girl despite their first meeting having some red flags to it. She largely saw her as Ben did. Someone awkward, strange, and maybe a bit emotionally stunted, but an otherwise positive and friendly person. Considering how she knew others viewed herself, she couldn't exactly judge, at least not entirely. There were admittedly a few aspects of the spooky eyeless girl she couldn't so easily get past, but the bigger problem was how to go about treating her. Despite how the other acted, they weren't actually that far apart in age, at least as far as Thera could see. Considering that the other was a shapeshifter from another reality, that might not have actually been true at all. There was no way for her to know from sight alone how many years Abel had lived, but what mattered was that she presented as a teenager, which meant it should have been fine to treat her the same as she would also. And yet, the girl had a childishness to her. An innocence despite her violent nature. Both things stemming from the condition of the other's home reality that made it a struggle to know the right way to treat her. Whether Ben wanted to admit it or not, by trying to expose her to more in the world and instill some good habits in her while she was with them, he was in essence taking on a bit of a familial role, considering Abel wasn't going to look at someone weaker than her as a role model. But what was the best way for Thera to treat her? Even as her experience with it grew, so much of relating and connecting with people still felt like fumbling around in the dark, hoping to figure one another out, but it all started with an attempt, leaving her to pat the other side of the couch, inviting the girl to sit with her. For now, is there anything I can do to help cheer you up? Well, there is one little thing, the girl said, perking up with the offer, only to be immediately squashed. You're not getting a bite out of me or Mora. Then no, I'm fine, Abel told her as she deflated, sinking back into herself and leaving Thera to sigh. For now. Why not tell me exactly what happened that has you so disappointed? Humph, what's there to tell? Instead of having a real competition, I let the pipsqueak pick something and she beat me. With that something being? 5 rounds of crazy 8s. 5 losses? Yeah, that would do it. When they'd all been playing together, even if she lost a few times, she won enough to brighten her mood with every victory, leaving her to gloat until someone would bring her down a peg again. But Thera couldn't imagine the girl was one to deal well with defeat after defeat, leaving her to reach out to try and comfort her just a bit, gently rubbing her head and getting the summons gaze locked on her for the action. Abel, I know that losing can be disappointing, but that's part of what makes winning fun, she said, trying her best to think of how she might explain such a thing to a child without coming across as too condescending. And if you won all the time, people wouldn't want to play with you, would they? Abel, a small jerk from the girl who'd zoned out under the attempt at comfort she'd received. Her focus renewed as she shook before answering. Maybe, but I'm great. That's already plenty enough reason for anyone to want to entertain me. Games are about making sure everyone has fun. Can you tell me what it is about losing you hate so much? Humph. I only ever lost once in my old world. And was that so terrible? It landed me on this one. Right, Ben said it. Post-apocalyptic hellscape, so anytime something might have qualified as a loss, that might have meant a better than not chance of death. Great. So winning equaled survival for her, a trait that had to basically be bred into the girl in the same way the people of her new home were made to give faith. Not a trait that couldn't be overcome, but one that might feel unnatural to even try, considering whatever sort of cutthroat world she hailed from. Well, maybe that was true there, but not here. Thera still tried. Sure, things can be dangerous on this planet, but there's a difference between a loss that gets you killed and a leisure activity. Try thinking of it this way. When you're playing with someone, the game doesn't matter, does it? Why wouldn't it matter? That's the entire point. No, the game is just something to keep you busy. The point is spending time with people and enjoying each other's company. Losing a card game or a board game isn't a real loss because winning isn't a real win. All of it is just an excuse to have fun with people you care about. She didn't know how convincing it was as she was saying it, but she could see Abel perk up just a bit as she did. So, you're saying you're all just happy to spend time with me? I'm saying I'm happy to spend time with everyone, aren't you? When you don't get too wrapped up in competition, it sure seems like you're enjoying being here with us. Of course, you guys are buddies. Alright, then you're my friend too, and I know Delaire, if she wanted you to play with her, that was her trying to be your friend as well. Try not to think about games so much as winning and losing, and instead focus on how they can help you get closer to the people you're playing with. Then are we closer now that we've played together? I think so. Abel didn't answer, lost in her thoughts until Thera stopped rubbing her head. Without a word, the other girl took her hand and put it back, making her desires clear even if she didn't come out and say it, leaving Thera to keep giving what comfort and reassurance she could. But I think this is progress, she told herself, and with one napping on me and the other wanting my attention, it looks like I'm not getting to move until Ben comes home. Sakhel, he was only able to push into a single new level, even if they'd kept training beyond that in the hopes of lowering her next threshold, while Valeria continued to keep up with her previous trend of withstanding his mental training the longest, showing her worth as the High Priestess of Myriad to claim 3 for herself, even if it left her completely drained by the end. Really, the entire crowd had managed it far better than he'd been expecting. His ability to force them to level seemed to have improved with his mind, but even then, everyone got 2, even if that was where the majority of them stopped. They couldn't quit so easily though, not when, from their perspective, they were one-on-one with someone who was destined to join their god's ranks who'd just given a small speech about the value of improving. Still, the drop-off there was steep, with more than half of them quitting after that, content to take that growth and keep working on their own from there, especially when Ben assured them that so long as he could, he'd help them again in the future. Of those who kept up longer, worshippers gaining a 3rd level before quitting made up the majority of the rest, or it would have, barring one specific group, the demi-demons, a species that had been created by their evil gods to focus on giving faith in a way that went beyond any other race and do little more than what they'd need to in order to sustain themselves so they could continue to do so. That race was particularly suited to long bouts of work and training, and in the confines of his mind where their thoughts were sped up and their bodies couldn't be exhausted, they particularly shined. 7th, 8th, even 9th levels were gained among them, with even the children they're able to reach the 5th without complaint before they'd needed to stop, leaving Ben's eyes alight for the results. As complicated as their origins may have been, they were showing what fools any god too proud to claim them for their own were, and to Myriad's benefit. They loved that cube and were loyal for the grace and mercy they'd been shown, leading to levels of effort their old gods could have only dreamed of. Toltho was one of them to reach that barrier, as were the rest of the surviving priests, and it was clear none wanted to stop, not when they felt so close, even if they didn't have it in them to say it when Ben brought each of their training sessions to an end, leaving him to give a small laugh for each of them as he explained the reason behind it while they were still in his head. I could work to awaken you now, but it's better if I wait. You all already know there's a lot of power to be gained for such a thing. I just want to make sure you get even more. The only trade-off is you need a bit of patience. When he put it like that, how could they argue? Even then he was thinking of them, trying to help them gain more than they could alone, and once everyone was done he released them from his mind, letting them open their eyes for the surprise waiting beyond, with the building they were in completely changed. While Ben had covered it where he thought he needed to and added other artistic flourishes to try to keep it from being gaudy, in the time he'd been working on them all he'd covered every surface with soul crystals and then added more beyond, replacing pews entirely with the magic material to give faith to their god from the countless souls it all contained, even if those within didn't know that. To them, it was more like they'd been transported to a completely different location. It was impossible to immediately realize that the building itself had just been changed, while Ben went back to the podium and gave a small bow. All of you have worked hard and I hope you'll keep doing so. If not for yourselves then for our God. Do your best to make Myriad proud. You all have the tools to go beyond what any of you think you can. Here, you should eat something, Ben said after everyone else had left, handing Valeria a plate and water from his ring. Sakhel had been given the role of leading the demi-demons back to Stonewall, but it was clear even when he'd been training her that Valeria had pushed herself too hard, wanting the strength he could offer and would have kept going if he hadn't stopped her, leaving the priestess with a pounding migraine by the end that she'd managed to hide until everyone else left. I'm fine. You're not. I should have stopped you sooner. From my own experiences, I'm comfortable saying you'll be feeling this for a day or two, so make sure you take it easy in that time. With the levels to her connect, he'd also raised her mental expansion, it getting to the 9th level being what pushed him to stop, but seeing the result of it, he couldn't deny he should have ended things sooner. While not to the same extent as some of the changes that he'd suffered through while his various mind skills had been growing together, it seemed Valeria was dealing with the aftereffects of her mind changing too much, too quickly. Even if it wouldn't be nearly as long for her to heal from like some of his worst experiences had taken, it would still be a very unpleasant couple of days. Still, she shook her head, immediately regretting that action as she mumbled instead. It was a good opportunity. I couldn't pass it up. And this is a good meal, you shouldn't pass it up either, he said as he wafted it under her nose, seeing it twitch from the smell alone as she perked up a little and took the plate, beginning to nibble away at it. Delicious. Yeah, everything I make is, he laughed. But Valeria, you don't need to be in such a rush. Whatever speed you can go at, if you want to grow then I'll help you. It's as simple as that. I couldn't possibly impose Dash. Who's imposing? I offered, and you're the high priestess of our God. You aren't below me in any way, so don't worry about the small things and just ask for help if you want to improve. I'm pretty sure I am below you since you're going to become a god yourself. Stolen from its rightful author, this tale is not meant to be on Amazon. Report any sightings. That right there is called sweating the small stuff, and so not the point. You want to improve then let me or Myriad know and we'll sort out a time for it. Obviously not immediately. You officially need to wait for your brain to heal a bit, and I need to see if I can finish a little something to try and get you and some others the most out of any help I can give, but I will help you grow connect as far as possible if that's what you want. If you're really willing to go so far, then I'll humbly accept Dash. She started with a bow before letting out a small yip as he flicked her head. Not above you. If you're gonna thank me, then do it the way you'd thank a coworker or a pal. Got it. Ahem. Got it? She said, rubbing her now sorer head. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate that you'd take the time to help me improve. Of course. Now, do you think you can walk? MMH. I feel like I'm going to be unsteady on my feet for a while. All right then. Come on. I'll make sure you get home safely. Late though he already was, he made a small pit stop on the way back, going to the Stonewall Church to finish tiling it and replacing what decorations he could with more of the ensouled crystal for what extra bit of faith it would give, finishing the second church of his God in its entirety and needing only to make time to do the all-faith branch from there. But I should probably be careful with that for now, he told himself on his way back home. I already played pretty fast and loose going to the magic towers the other day. Even if the odds were slim, it was possible I could have run into Verbum. Don't want to risk running into Yuzu quite yet either, but this next level is still taking way longer than I'd hoped. While he wouldn't exactly say that Quox had been holding up well from what Ben was subjecting him to, he'd at least managed for a while, keeping his sanity for a few thousand years and only going truly mad after 20,000. But now what Ben was doing was more akin to chipping away at that insanity, eroding that being of everything he was or could be as he slowly lost more and more of himself. And when there's nothing left, well, I'll figure it out. He had a few more options after all, even if it worked out worse than he'd been hoping, but until he got another level, that would be a future worry as he opened the door and let himself inside, joining the rest where they waited. Sonia wasn't home yet. Ben was sure she was making time to visit his teacher out wherever the gods had the Yeti working, but the other three were there, even if only one was awake. With Mora asleep on Thera's legs while Abel napped on her shoulder, it seemed his girlfriend was trapped there, even if it made a cute scene and left him to exaggeratedly frame it with his fingers before materializing a picture of it while she rolled her eyes. You're late. Yeah, sorry. I trained them all like I'd planned, but Valeria went way too hard on it. She's currently dealing with a bit of the same problems I had when I raised my mind skills too much. And here? What's going on? MMH. Mora was feeling a bit sick from today. I won't go into details, but a smell got to him, so he needed to rest his stomach a bit, and it sounds like your little apprentice showed Abel no mercy while she was playing with her. I tried my best to reassure her and well, it ended like this. Ha! Now who's adopting her? He teased, getting a second eye roll for the comment. Still you, I'm just helping. I was just rubbing her head, but she didn't want me to stop, and I guess it relaxed her. I've gotten some pretty strong reactions ruffling her hair too. She might be a bit touch-starved. Well, if people think you're going to try and bite into them, that's going to happen, she pointed out. You should consider mentioning that to her later. I'm pretty comfortable saying that she knows, she just doesn't care. Or is just trying to find people who'll let her have some bites, while also letting her spend time with them. Then I think that works out to just you. I mean, it is kind of neat to find out how much I'm able to strengthen her with a bit of blood. That's because you're insane, but fine, she sighed. I think I'm getting used to how comfortable you are with the idea of people wanting bites out of you. I really wouldn't call it comfort. You let Abel. That's a trade-off. It makes her substantially stronger if I give her a bit and you're here to heal me. You let Mercy. When I did it was because she was going to either go insane from hunger or starve to death. You let Greed. Similar reason, only more traumatic for both of us. Flavor enhancement. Low blow, but that doesn't mean anything. Yeah? Tell me, Mr. Expert on skills the world over, do you know about anyone else who's ever gotten it? I mean, just because I haven't seen or read about anyone with it, doesn't mean they don't exist. And not only is there literally at least 2 different races on this planet whose young need to eat their parents to one extent or another, I grew up on a world with internet access. You aren't going to convince me that there isn't a certain subset of the global population that's way too into the idea of being eaten. There's no way I'm the first person to get this skill. Well, I guess we'll know if you ever awaken it. Never gonna happen. Your optimism is cute, she quietly giggled. But unfortunately for you, it doesn't take being your girlfriend to know you get curious. What are you going to do when you finally finish all of your jobs and only have Atre left? You really expect me to believe you aren't going to get curious about what a job no one's ever had before is going to do for you? Yes, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't matter. How big of a difference can it even make? Ben, when you kiss me after you get a level, I can tell the difference. Well, that was a small little psychological blow I wasn't expecting to deal with today, he muttered while she did her best to hold back her laughter, lest she wake the other two. Let's put a small pin in traumatizing me for a minute. So did you end up succeeding in helping her get over losing? I mean, maybe? I think she listened at least. Not super sure if she's going to take what I said to heart, but I tried my best. No, that's more than good enough, thanks. You can thank me by starting dinner. I'm starving but not exactly in a position to help. Ha, yeah, I'll do that. Need anything first? How long have you been stuck there? Over an hour. You can wake them, you know? MMH, I'd feel bad. I'll wake them when food is ready, so... Yeah, I'll be quick, he laughed, feeling mostly good. Beyond the small bit of psychological torment his girlfriend had inflicted on him, it had been a good day. Ending on a good meal would be the perfect way to finish it. And then after, I can see if Thera's talk with her helped Abel with the whole accepting the occasional defeat thing. The hell have I been sent to deal with this time? It was the question immediately on his mind when he got to the first site, landing and shifting back to his hominid form to find the destruction that had been left behind by the beast he was hunting, along with the unfortunate group who'd stumbled into it as they'd been clearing the land. No bodies remained. They never lasted long out there. But the signs of battle did. Faust could see examples of all sorts of combat, from earth magic that had warped the land to fire magic that had scorched it. Marks along surviving trees that had to be the products of swords and spears and others that had to have been from claws, but if they were from an inhabitant of the world or whatever invader he was hunting he couldn't say, leaving him to wonder at what else could have been involved that he just couldn't see. Depending on how they were used, The destruction left by both water and air magic could be easy to mistake for that of Earth, given the three's characteristics as physical magics once enough time had passed, but that wasn't where his mind went. Instead, suspecting something far less tangible as he looked around. The attacks he was seeing were spread throughout the area, something that could have happened as a result of whatever they were being aimed at moving around at high enough speeds, but that felt wrong too. Not enough of the differing types of blows were being centered on the same place to make it look like multiple people were targeting one thing. So what then? He asked himself. A herd could make sense. Gods know, there's enough of these awful bastards on the world for them to have run into one, especially since this group would have been specifically out to hunt down that exact sort of thing anyway. But previous investigators hadn't thought so, and neither did he. As he did his best to pull apart the various attacks he saw, trying to figure out where each warrior or mage was roughly when either casting their spells or striking out, trying to pull apart how the battle might have gone and finding pure chaos. The biggest conclusion there was to be made was that the group who'd gone out to try and clear out some of the monsters that had come to their world had almost all immediately descended to attacking each other. Dark magic, then, he groaned. Attack their minds and make them fight one another, at least that's my best guess. And an excellent reason to have come alone. The nature of his conglomerate soul meant that he could rely on the highest value from any creature he killed when it came to the aspects marked on his card, with his dark resistance being on the high end at 55. Still not high enough to give him a perfect resistance to such a thing, but despite his more recent sleeping troubles, the skill he'd worked so hard to raise to its peak had left him with a strong mind. He wasn't easily conquered by that application of magic thanks to the collective souls that made him up. But that wasn't true of anyone else. Had he come with a party of second tiers, then he would have been fighting a battle on all sides, made worse for the fact that he'd need to protect himself from his allies as well as keep them safe from each other. He remembered well what Peak said, maybe they would all be willing to die if that was what was needed, but he was less so. As powerful as any third tier was, there were so few of them. It was the second tiers who were the true hope for the world, and even if their numbers had grown significantly in the past few years, losing even a handful would be a blow when the next wave drew ever closer. He knew he could survive whatever was thrown at him, no need for any other deaths in the process. If you encounter this story on Amazon, note that it's taken without permission from the author. Report it. Still, he knew that others would want to be informed, desiring updates on where he was given his own perceived value and with no other way to give it, making sure the area around him was safe first. He knelt down and clasped his hands, starting to pray and not stopping until he was answered. Velmet, he said in a reverence he hadn't completely managed to shake, even after all of his years as a third tier. I've come to give you an update. I've made it to the first site, and having investigated, I'm comfortable saying the contender is likely a holder of dark magic or some variant. I'll be doing a quick re-examination of the next 4 locations too to see if I can confirm that at all, and from there, begin my hunt in proper. I won't know for sure until I've looked at the next few spots to compare. It's been long enough that it could have easily faded, and there's no doubt other beasts have made their way through, but I do smell demons. Of course, chances were just as good that those were different groups that had come to scavenge any remains that had gone uneaten by whatever monstrosity had driven them to kill each other, but through it all there had to have been some real clue. He just needed to find it, and no matter how powerful any demon might have been, their weaknesses were plain. Their violent nature would always give them away in the end. Even if they could suppress it for a time, that was just to enable more carnage. What higher functions they had were wasted on them, and the only thing that made them the top predators of the galaxy was their overwhelming numbers alone. A beast like that would be discovered in no time. Velmet asked, sparing some concern for her believer. I'll be fine, he said confidently. I've slept well enough the last 2 days that my stamina will cover me until this job is done. What a sad thing to hear from one's goddess, he said back as a small smile touched his lips. But not to worry, I intend to live a full, long life before I join you. If you're going to have eternity with me, then I just need to make sure my life is filled with the sorts of stories to make it an enjoyable one. She practically whispered in his thoughts. You know as well as anyone that gentle lives don't birth third tiers. Then perhaps, for you, I'll seek some peace when this war is won, he conceded. But until then, I have my part to play and my role to fill. Of course, Velmet, you'll hear from me again soon. Staring in the sky above at the meat construct he'd made while it contracted and pulsed, Ben wondered briefly if it was time for a change once more as a notification rang out in his head. Yep, that seals it. Time to remodel my realm. While flesh was the current theme, with towering structures of muscle and bone twitching everywhere he looked, with the new level expanding his area of control, he'd decided it was a good enough time to change it as any, destroying all that existed within his plane to begin anew in the now empty space. With remodeling happening thousands of times each day as Ben built up and modified all he wanted to before getting bored and starting fresh, every part of himself that existed within his realm moving at their highest speeds for what practice it would bring as new structures went up. Actualizing the next atom by atom, spires began to form, his new motif being to build it all in such a way that while it would fill the space around him, it would in essence be composed of one giant molecule, creating a challenge that would fill a few prospective decades, even as different parts of himself were left wondering at what progress it would give him. There was a chance what he was doing might qualify as crafting experience, but while awakening that particular skill to its third tier could have affected how he wanted to raise Connect, it was a different bit of experience he was truly curious about. For all of the perceived millennia he'd been actualizing in his realm, it hadn't been enough to bring that skill to the level of godhood. And while not exactly a goal, there was a fair share of disappointment in that fact. He'd put what he would best describe as an unnatural amount of time into it, at least by mortal standards, given that no one else could spend tens of thousands of years on such a project. It had to be chipping away at that skills wall, yet not enough to cross it, leaving him to sigh. Maybe there's some skills that can't grow to the third tier? He wondered. What would a third-tier actualization even look like? I'm comfortable saying I can already do it at least as well as any god, so what would it mean to surpass the gods in their innate abilities? The only thing I can imagine it might lead to is my constructs becoming permanent in the mortal realm, but if that's going to be the case, there might be a different skill I should be working on becoming a contender for to see if I can get the two to merge together. It was the best idea he had at least and led to a different area of practice, away from his realm as the part of himself focused on the mortal plane would need to take over while he and Abel walked Delaire home after finishing early for the day. While they talked though, passing the time as they went through the streets, Ben began working on a different skill, keeping it confined to within his palm to avoid drawing any more eyes than usual as more actualization began to take place. Shapes shifting at a speed that would have left it an indecipherable blur to any onlooker as notifications began going off in his thoughts. A skill he already knew he'd be quick to level. The only reason he hadn't gotten it to at least the 9th was because he'd chosen to focus on his commissions so soon after having gained it, but with both done there was no reason not to devote himself in full, his thought speed ensuring that a host of notifications were his reward. Unauthorized use. This story is on Amazon without permission from the author. Report any sightings. Alright, maybe I should have just made the time to do this earlier. Only a few seconds of real time was all he'd needed to get it to its 9th level, only needing to awaken it from there but taking more work to do that with no notification telling him he'd succeeded even as they made it to Satchel's door minutes later, letting themselves in for his student to get home. Alright, see you tomorrow, bright and early Delaire, and we'll work extra hard to make up for ending early today. Okay? Okay. See you guys tomorrow. With them on their way, heading back to the shop, the two chatted as they went while a different part of Ben was left with a different problem, staring down at the broken mass within his mindscape. Letting out a low whimper, he stared down at the thing that had once been a god. Quox, who in his greed had made a choice that might have doomed that and every other world, was in essence destroyed, with little remaining of the once proud god. But that was inescapable. No matter how long he'd resisted at first, how long he'd begged after resistance was found futile, and how long he'd retreated into madness for what small protection it might have given, the god had dealt with his torment for what would feel to him like nearly 100,000 years. No matter how powerful a being it might have once been, there was only so much a mind could take before it would collapse, even if it created a problem for him as he stared at it. At this point, does it still count towards any of my skills? He thought aloud. Is it evil to pound at meat that's already been ground? Is it destructive to hit at something that's already been reduced to dust? Is there any experience to be gained as an evil god if the thing I'm getting it from doesn't even remember its own past divinity anymore? He didn't know and had no way to know for sure, but he doubted that it was helping his experience acquisition. The thing before him that had once been a deity had given that universe's most ravenous monsters access to the system, and he felt no pity for the state he'd left it in, but if he'd broken it so thoroughly that there was nothing else for him to gain, then that too was an issue that would get in the way of his future growth. So what do I do? Trade him out for a different god crystal? It might work, but it would also draw some eyes I'm not ready to get quite yet. I've got the Prophet Demon's soul too, but it didn't get to ascend, so there's no way to tell if that would work. I'd rather not test that quite yet and risk ruining a rare sample. The outsider. No, even with the current state of my mind, I don't want to risk connecting to it. I can already imagine having the mind of something that exists in more than 3 spatial dimensions being bad for me if it wouldn't just kill me outright. But now that I think about it, that might be a decent push to awaken deep connection. No, not doing that unless I'm really running out of choices. It's not like there's no other options, I just need to. Doesn't matter. I'll work through what I can, and if nothing else works, then I'll consider it. Definitely not before I've finished all of my other jobs. At least Eldritch Mind User, because God, I really don't want that killing me. Okay, where does that leave me? It felt like it left him exactly where he'd started, with the remains of a tortured god before him, but it wasn't like there were no options he could do with it. He even had other experiences and skills that might have helped. If what remained of Quox was too damaged by what he'd been through, Ben only needed to remove the damage, wiping the slate clean to start fresh once more. And if it helped the prisoners, reaching deeper into the connection he had up between then, Ben looked at the memories stored in the other's soul. No longer a functional mind there to hold them, but still giving him something to work off of as he began trying to cut away his time there, feeling a resistance incomparable to any mortal mind as perceived minutes passed to break down some of the experiences of the god he'd held, feeling a shocking amount of strain even when he empowered the skill with his sacrilege and only managed to destroy the last half of a day. Interesting, he muttered. This looks like it'll take a while if I'm going to try and start from where I left him, but on the plus side, not only does it look like this is going to be some really good training for Mind Break, it might end up being decent training for my sacrilege too. Erasing the memories of a god to hopefully draw even more benefits for torturing it again. A part of him knew that whatever the reason behind it, he couldn't deny he was living up to the name of evil god, and did his best to ignore the brief voice in the back of his head asking him what he'd do if someone with the power to do so ever came to judge him for it. Some omnipotent god of the multiverse only waiting for him to die to condemn him for his actions. Well, if any sort of higher power like that really does exist, then I think I've got some even harsher words about letting the demons as a whole exist. Who knows, maybe I'd even get to argue my case a bit before I'd be left damned to hell. All right, you sure you want to come along, Abel? Yeah. Sounds like it'll kill some time. And you'll be on your best behavior? When aren't I? Good enough. Then let's go. Stepping through his gate, the two passed through to Analia and the greater gate network beyond, making their way to the edge of the city holding Hilori's main church and finding many of her believers already in the surrounding area as they walked, all of them anticipating their goddess's descent. An event he'd been asked to help guard for what danger to the goddess it would create. For all of the anticipation in her worshippers, none were hovering around the church itself, keeping patient out of respect until the designated time came and let the two walk inside, finding two more already waiting. Zyzel, it's been a while. He greeted the bright blue starfish happily, getting the same enthusiasm from the other apostle in return. It has. Nice to see you doing well, Ben. You seem much brighter now than the last time we'd met. Ah, well, I'm in a pretty good place right now. So I've heard. Congratulations are in order. The other laughed. I can now brag I lost a contest with a god. Ha, I'll have to make sure I'm an impressive one then. Make the fact that you held your own an even bigger achievement. And how are the kids? Oh, keeping us busy. They're talking now, so there's always so much being said, and they're ravenous little things. I bet. Ben smiled, trying to ignore the fact that those very children had eaten their way through the flesh of the very man he was talking to when they'd been born. And then this would be? He nodded to the other in the room, a young woman who bore a far greater resemblance to his own kind than Zyzel's. with a pale complexion and two solid black eyes along with two glass-like horns jutting out of her head, making it clear that she was a member of Hallori's original race while he appraised her. Her people really do resemble her, interesting, he thought to himself. Considering that the vast majority of gods look nothing like their race, I wonder if there's some narcissism going on there. Ah, hello there, I am a priestess of Hallori, she said politely, not giving her name as her tone turned far more rapturous for what she said next. I'll be the one to act as her vessel for this. All right, nice to meet you. And your own guest? Zaisel asked, looking at Abel. She seems hungry. Don't mind her. She's usually like that, he said as he pulled a plate from one of his rings and handed it off to the girl. This is Abel, another third tier and a bit of extra muscle in case anything happens. Nice to meet ya, she said through mouthfuls of food. So, when's this thing start? Ah, our goddess was going to come down soon, but before that I was told that Ben would be doing some more work on our church. Yeah, but I'll make it quick. Give me a minute. He'd renovated that very church in the past and had no desire to destroy all of his previous work, turning it into an act of modification more than anything else, as entire sections of wall were pulled away with his magic as the soul tiles were pulled from his rings, being set and covered again by what had originally been there with as few modifications as possible to keep the previous designs he'd worked so hard on as he went through the building to fit every soul in where he could. What scraps that created getting slipped into his rings until he'd finished up the building. And done. There, now you should be getting more faith. Happy Hallori? I am, the priestess said, now exuding divinity in a way that announced the goddess's descent upon her believer. But I did hear that little comment about narcissism before. This story has been stolen from Royal Road. If you read it on Amazon, please report it. It was a private thought. It doesn't count unless you want me to start judging you for what goes through your head. Ugh. The scope of your mind reading really leaves something to be desired, but fine. For now, can you deal with this before it becomes a problem? He's your believer. Ben shrugged as he looked at Zaisel in a deep bow. If you don't like it, then let him know. Very clearly not who I was talking about, she said as she cast her eyes to the other girl in the room. Abel locked onto her and visibly drooling. I'd asked you to come to help keep me safe. Bringing along someone who's going to want to eat me is an immediate failure on your part. Okay, fair. Abel, can you chill? But I'm going to be so good and helpful, she said, not taking her attention from the goddess before her as her nose twitched at whatever it was she could smell. I'll keep you perfectly safe, so just a little taste? A teeny tiny little nibble? It is true that you'll be helping out. A couple drops of blood shouldn't be too much to ask. Ben, come on, Hallori. Aren't you a knowledge goddess? You've got to be at least a little curious about how that would work out. I'm really not. Consider the fact that it's going to be for the good of the world then. Make her just a bit stronger with no effort on your part. I can't imagine any possible way this turns out well for me. You're a goddess of magic, he pointed out as he materialized a cup and knife. Just heal yourself after. Come on, it would be interesting to see what sort of attributes an actual goddess can provide. Falling stars. I wish you just brought your lover along instead, Hallori muttered as she took the knife. At least she seems somewhat able to keep you in line. I'll let her know you think so highly of her, but for now. Fine, but if she goes for more, I'm going back up and you can both explain to my eager believers why I won't be descending today. Deal. Abel, you get what you get, so be good afterwards. Okay? Okay. Pulling the knife across her skin and feeling its bite, she let her blood fill the cup she'd been given before instantly healing the wound and handing it over, Ben taking it before Abel could get her hands on it. Abel, let's see your card. This sort of thing isn't going to come up often, so we should look at how much a proper goddess raises you. Fine, fine, she said, tossing it to him as she ripped the cup from his hands and poured it down her throat, licking her lips as she finished it and looking nearly as rapturous as the priestess had when she announced she'd be the one her goddess would descend upon. Delicious. And nutritious from the looks of it, Ben muttered. Roughly 200 to your intelligence, 200 to your mana, 100 to your mana regen, and then 50 to everything else. If all gods give these sorts of attributes, then we really should just let Abel eat one. I vote Ineth. Yes. No. Hellori told them far more firmly, looking on the edge of a headache. No cannibalizing gods for power. I can't believe I even need to say that. Fine, this has pointed out a different area I can test with her later, so it doesn't matter. For now, Abel, you've gotten your snack, so you'll be good and won't bother her for more. Right? MMH. Okay? She told him. Even if her attention hadn't left the goddess before them after her warm drink and drove Hellori to take a subtle step back. You paid up well, so I'll make sure that nothing gets their hands on you, and if anything does get through, well, I won't let any of you go to waste. Not bothering to even reply, Hellori just silently stared at Ben, looking for anything while he shrugged. I'll make sure you're safe, so there won't be any chance for anything to harm you in a way that could leave any waste. Good. But for now, he began, instantly breaking what faith in him she had. My own testing. It's not often you get to see a god-on world. This is my only real chance to see how my little skill is going to react with you. Myriad is right, you're genuinely the worst. Come on now, don't be like that. You won't feel a thing. Maybe. He'd experimented enough on Quax's soul, along with some smaller attempts on Myriad, to have a good idea of what would or wouldn't cause active harm. He just wanted to see what other effects he might hold as he began, connecting to the goddess to see how she was feeling, since he genuinely didn't want to harm her as his tests commenced. With immediate results. While he couldn't block her from seeing him when he was literally right in front of her, it was quick to tell that not only could he block her mind reading but her divinity as well. The bits that were leaking out of her and filled the room vanished in an instant, and leaving Xyzel to look back up from his deep bow until Ben allowed it to return, with further testing continuing from there, revealing a far grander ability. He could force the goddess back to her realm. Nobody had been expecting it. The priestess left blinking for a moment in confusion until Hellori came back down, an instant frown on her face. Don't do that. Just knowing I can is enough for now. I do have 1 or 2 more things I want to test though, which can wait. I came down specifically to motivate my believers, and the crowds gathered outside to get exactly that. All right, I can hold back a bit. Good. Then come along, stand behind me, and all of you behave yourselves. She told them both with a pointed look before opening the church door, and found a crowd of both her believers and general members of the city had formed, all to hear what a goddess had come down to say. His mental map carried him to the next 2 destinations while his nose brought him to the last. With Faust finally confident he'd locked onto the smell of whatever monstrosity had been wreaking havoc on the expedition sent to slay it, while he surveyed the 4th site, finding it the same as the other 3. Signs of attacks of all sorts, both magics and weapons, that made it clear the group that had found it last had descended on one another. One more point to dark magic controlling them like every other location he'd seen, but he couldn't dwell on it. Having its scent was as good as being able to see the beast itself, and with his nose telling him the next direction to follow. He didn't wait, his shape changing to something far sleeker as he forced his flesh to warp under his power, shrinking down while limbs stretched out before sprouting feathers where there'd been none before. A form focused on speed and dexterity to make it through those dense woods as he beat his new wings and felt them propel him through the air, the end of his mission feeling almost in sight. Here. Having changed again as he passed through the last 2 sites, he took to the lands once the dense woods had cleared. Forest slowly turned to swamp, and muddying his senses, yet still he knew he'd found the thing. The area thick with the smell of it despite so much else that was catching his nose from both the rot and blood filling the place, the latter undoubtedly connected to the monster hiding within it and acting as another point to help narrow down his prey while his flesh shifted as he moved in. Pulling from the beasts he held, he took into account the armor wrapping his body as he changed. His bits of exposed flesh losing their fur while his focus on speed changed to navigating the new environment, creating limbs better suited for traversing both shallow water and the muck below, not wanting to disturb anything to draw attention to himself in the hopes of sneaking in as he slowly narrowed down the final area, still losing whatever bit of surprise he had in the end. Whether it understood he was a person or merely thought a stray beast had wandered into its nest, it didn't matter. That demon, like all others, held some degree of soul magic, and as the holder of a soul himself, it was enough to give away his presence no matter what precautions he'd taken. leaving him to briefly evaluate the monster in the seconds before it struck. Semi-aquatic then. Makes sense considering the location. He could see gill-like structures along its neck as well as a small fin sticking out of its back, but the location of its other attacks and the rest of its form made it clear the beast was more suited to land, with a sleek shape and powerful limbs giving the impression that the quadruped was more aligned to running than treading water and showed some of that power as it lunged. Claws extended to tear into him, and while Faust felt them crack as he turned, letting his armor take the brunt of the damage and bringing a smile to his lips. More than worth the purchase. A blow so much weaker than Abel's hadn't even registered. His attacker was the one left in pain as it screamed and jumped back, growing cautious as it appraised him, trying to determine whether it was a threat or if his defenses were simply better than it had expected, with it not getting the chance to make the judgment. Unauthorized duplication. This narrative has been taken without consent. Report sightings. Seeing it pause, Faust didn't bother to linger in his curiosity. His very reason for being there was before him, and well aware of his presence, there was no longer a need for subtlety. As things were, its size was only a bit larger than his own, but his power changed that. From the demon's perspective, new flesh came from nowhere as it saw its hunter triple in volume, but it was enough for it to know there was far more than met the eye as it was torn between its instincts and its need to survive. Everything it was demanded it kill the creature that had crossed into its domain, to fight and struggle for what power victory would bring it, yet all would be for naught if it died, driving the course of its plans. It didn't know enough then, but it could change that, needing only some distance to escape and observe before the creature's flesh would fill its stomach, and with that goal it summoned more of its kin to act as distractions. Dozens of new demons of all shapes and sizes jumping up from the water to scare off its attacker. Faust not even blinking at the sudden change in numbers. Not dark magic then. Light. All of them were illusions and easily ignored for that fact. While his eyes may have told him they were real, he wasn't so inexperienced as to fall for such a thing when the rest of his senses made it clear how false they were. Making no sounds and giving off no smells, the demon that conjured them had been skilled enough to apply his illusions to the water too, making it appear to splash and ripple with their arrival, yet couldn't move the air in a way that would imply true forms passing through it. To his senses, it couldn't be more plain, but for an army hunting it, how things kept ending became obvious for that fact, with a swarm of demons suddenly appearing among them being the exact sort of thing that would cause chaos, needing only a single person to react with a poorly planned attack to cause a chain reaction. The details of how it had led each group to attacking each other weren't instantly clear, but in the end, the exact details didn't matter. Faust had now seen what it had to offer and found it lacking. A beast that only had tricks to work off of instead of true power, and he could see the panic in its eyes as he ignored its illusions, making way directly to it without a moment's hesitation. It tried to run, but it failed, the shifter on it instantly, crushing down with his greater weight, and attempts to fight back were just as fruitless. Its front claws had grown back already under its light magic, but still not enough as it swiped at him desperately, fingers breaking along with claws now when it went against the barrier covering him. Left defenseless as the shifter looked down at its prey and opened his jaws, biting through its neck and swallowing, feeling as it died with notifications ringing out in his head. Acquired skill High Light Magic Level 9. Light Magic Level 6 has merged into High Life Magic. Acquired skill Low Soul Magic Level 9. Low Soul Magic Level 9 has merged into True Shifting. They continued on, the demon's skills merging into his own, granting him occasional levels along the way, but he could barely hear them over the sound of his own pounding heart, his pulse only rising after the kill as a single thought went through his head. Poison. Given how high his resistance was thanks to the natures of so many creatures he'd made his own, anything being able to get through like that was slim, but he had no other immediate answer as to what could be causing the changing feelings in him. His heart rate only growing while his blood felt like fire in his veins, and he did the only thing he could, trying to purify it with the magics he had with little in the way of results. He felt himself fading, not knowing whether or not the thing he'd just eaten had killed him, but not having any other options to deal with it. The last thing he did was make sure he grew gills to use as he slipped into the water at his feet, the whole world going black as he did. Hilori's speech went smoothly. No new disaster there to justify either Ben or Abel's presence, but had a clear effect on all of her faithful who'd come to hear it. The crowd hung on her every word, Just being in the presence of a goddess was a reward the vast majority of people thought they'd never get to enjoy, and while there wasn't much to be said beyond the need for people the world over to continue doing their best, coming from a deity it was enough, with Ben's presence adding to those words. Though not revealing himself or Abel as third tiers, he filled the role he was paid for, examining the souls of everyone who'd entered his range and giving them the applicable knowledge to help them grow, and with some getting levels mid-speech. It only upped the atmosphere by the time it came to an end. But that wasn't what he cared about. Even though she wanted to resist, Ben was able to get a few more tests done on his sacrilege before she could escape back up to her realm, leading to one important discovery. Not only could he force a god out of a body they'd descended upon, he could trap them there as well. With the implication being huge. He could be the one to decide how he'd approach any god if it came to it, able to choose for himself if facing someone in the mortal realm or a divine one was more beneficial to him in terms of conflict. Sure, it didn't seem like he'd be able to force a god down from their realm to inhabit a body, but that was a minor issue. From Ben's own encounter with him, tied to the single time the Grey had witnessed the deity, it seemed that the demon god own preferred to inhabit flesh, and if Ben was to kill him, that's where they'd meet. Meaning if it seemed most beneficial, he could either drive the god to his realm and take the fight there or else prevent that deity from escaping in the same way. He didn't know for sure what would be better. One of the only ways he knew to kill a god was to do it while they were an immortal, but he'd need to experiment and plan for whatever the best method would be before it came to it. But still, this is a nice little bump in my victory odds. With my current sacrilege level and assuming I get my connect awakened, I'd even go so far as to say I've got a 1.1% chance of winning. And I've depressed myself again. Okay, I'll recalculate my odds as I level my sacrilege some more. Who knows, maybe by the time the third wave rolls around, I'll be at a whopping 5%. Ben, this is psychotic, Thera groaned in their backyard as they stood around, Abel laughing out at her reaction. No, it's a meal. It's an experiment, he clarified as he finished rigging up one of his clones. A tube going down its throat to constantly dispense a nutritional sludge while he added a choker to its neck. And essentially harmless. Just a little practice for you, potentially a whole lot of strength for Abel, and some satisfied curiosity for me. Now, is everyone ready? Yes. Fine. His girlfriend sighed, grateful that her aunt was around to distract Mora from the coming scene, as Ben removed the divine crystal from his armband and slipped it into the choker. Getting to watch as the clone body shifted and warped at the beast form skill was applied, taking characteristics of both the god and demon souls within to warp his copied flesh but showing no signs of consciousness. Ben still working on removing enough memories and experiences from its soul to allow it to be so. The story has been taken without consent. If you see it on Amazon, report the incident. And immediately getting its arm ripped off for that fact, Abel tearing through skin, muscle, and bone before scarfing the torn limb down while Thera worked on enhancing the body's digestive rate before healing it, beginning the process of regrowing that lost appendage, spending her mana to force the food it was being made to eat to become flesh while Ben for his part stared at Abel's card, looking for the results of that test and letting out a low whistle when he got them. Across the board, your attributes just grew by about 330 points. Jesus, that's actually insane. The arm she'd just eaten had to have massed out to around 6 of the cups of blood he'd usually give her, meaning that based on the regular volumes he'd give it as the equivalent of getting 55 points to everything 6 times over. Worse than how Halori's blood had grown the girl, yet still incomparable to anything else, as Ben briefly wondered if the difference between the two gods was from Halori having access to faith the other didn't, Ben's torture somehow degrading Quox's soul, or else just some fundamental difference in the two beings. Quox had been a god of growth and gain after all, and even stat upgrade with no specialties compared to Halori almost made sense until one remembered that despite increasing intelligence, mana, and mana recovery by so much, she also upgraded all other attributes by 50 points as well. But that wasn't the only change on the card, with another Ben had warned the girl about, getting complete indifference when he did for the surprisingly only single level of sacrilege she'd gained after ripping off what had in essence been a god's arm at the time. Which makes no sense because when I made a coat into Myriad's first church I got 2 levels of it, so what's the difference there? Inherent talent? Maybe the fact that I'm an apostle makes every bit of sacrilege I could do just inherently worse too. Or maybe the state Quox is in leaves him barely qualified as a god at this point, which would contribute to why my experience gain has just been so slow. I'll need to work even harder at erasing his memories of everything I've put him through then. Still, it was a result that left Abel practically dancing with glee, ripping off the clone's arm once more after Thera was done regrowing it and taking the other side for good measure, scarfing both done while his girlfriend glanced at him from the side. So, how long are we going to do this for? Forever, please. Abel chimed in, expectations clear in her eyes while Ben shook his head. If you're feeling patient enough and Abel keeps taking both arms, then 20 more times sound okay to you? 40 limbs should work out to all of her stats other than her regeneration rates passing 30,000. Most importantly, her weeping. Doing this makes her more powerful, and making her more powerful is better for the planet, right? Oh? It also means she's going to crush you the next time you two fight. That's fine, I don't need to win against her. And I could be even more powerful if you guys just made me a few dozen of these a day forever. Abel said sweetly, instantly being crushed. Nope, sorry, but this is still time-consuming. Me and Thera both have better things to do than feed you like this constantly. Better than trying to save the planet? Make me strong enough and I'll do it single-handedly. If you're good, then I'll talk to the gods to make sure you keep getting some god limbs to snack on. Okay? I think I can guarantee a pretty constant supply while making it not my responsibility. Really? Really? But only if you're good. Gotta make sure you behave for the rest of the time you're with us, and just as importantly, you can't complain when we finish for the day. Okay. An answer that left her looking like a kid on Christmas. It wasn't like it was going to be too hard to set up, only needing to approach the gods about it later, and while he thought about that, he ignored the teasing look on Thera's face, knowing she had a comment on the tip of her tongue that she mercifully kept back from saying in front of Abel herself. So, I wanted to talk to you guys about an easy way to power up Abel. Just spoiling every one of your children then, huh? Myriad asked without even glancing away from his work to enjoy the frown the statement brought to his apostle's face. Don't you start. Thera was joking about it until she went to sleep. I'm not adopting her. Why not? Despite a few of your own personality issues, I genuinely think you'd be a good father to her. I have absolutely no clue how to even respond to that. So what's the way then, Ben? Hellori asked him, bearing in mind that if you start telling everyone up here to come down and make some donations like I let you talk me into, someone is going to try and smite you. Well, you're on the right track, but not quite there. Have you guys started producing more demigods like me? We have. Getting Vividus to do it? Not like there's a better option on the planet when it comes to the mass production of homunculi on that scale. Then it's simple. I don't know what parts you're grafting onto any recipients to do it, but just put the collar as high as you can when using a god soul and cut everything off below it so it maintains the changes inflicted on it. From there, transfer what you need to the recipient and pack the rest away for Abel to eat later. Her attributes will explode before you know it. Your imagination disgusts me, Myriad sighed as he finally looked away from his work, but I suppose it's technically better than being forced to break the leftovers down. I'll bring it up the next chance I get. Excellent, and if you guys decide against it, I'll let her know. As one of the few third-tier combatants, I'm sure none of you want her raising a spat and refusing to fight, do you? Always with the threats with you, isn't it? That's less of a threat than a prediction. Anyway, while we're on the topic, how's demigod production going so far? Ugh, good would be an understatement, Myriad said, sounding far too frustrated about what should have by all accounts been fantastic news. There's the small issue that it looks like odds of getting an integrated body skill instead of a partial body one are only about 1%, but still, even the partial body skill has been showing more than effective enough at increasing the holder's growth rates and abilities as they relate to the used god, with the one in question holding domains of magic, the self, and sight. Initial testing has found it safe enough in the few hundred Vividus, has already modified that we're looking at ramping up production. While it's not going to be mandatory, we're expecting to have every combatant associated with an army who wants to undergo the procedure modified by the third wave, and at the very least all first and second ranked adventurers modified too, with hopes that we'd be able to get the third ranks as well. although that's a significantly larger group given it doesn't require awakened skills to reach. Still, by the time this is done, this is going to be a world of demigods. I can only imagine what the genetic legacy of this is going to look like a few thousand years down the line. Sounds like a future problem. Considering the fact that you're a third-tier, future problems are by definition going to be at least somewhat your problem. The genuine version of this novel can be found on another site. Support the author by reading it there. That brings up a good point, Ben said thoughtfully. My integrated divine body is currently at the 6th level, and honestly, I'm kind of hoping I get another 1 or 2 before the next wave, but if I die and ascend, it's going to become a minor divinity for me, right? You think that means I'll be able to help transition the partial skill to an integrated skill for anyone who has it? I think I don't want to think about it. At the very least, so long as you live a good, long life before then, there might not even be a chance for you to try, because once this war ends, we aren't making more demigods like this. Well, I guess we'll see about that. I did make it extraordinarily clear that the divine crystals belong to me. They're just being lent out, so when the war ends, if I take them all back, then it's up to me whether I want to make more demigods, right? I don't like this line or reasoning. And since I'll be a new god, Ben went on, that could make a decent avenue for pulling in some believers. Convert now and the Church of Ben will turn you into a demigod, free of charge. You'd need someone to do a procedure like that. And? Thera's outliving me by centuries, and she did the very first one in the first place, so she's the only one I actually need to convince into doing it. Speaking of, I haven't actually broached the topic with her, but when I do ascend, would it be weird to try and get her to convert to me, make her my apostle or something? It feels like it would be weird, but I know you guys have all sorts of stupid rules up here about how gods should act with mortals who aren't their own. Analia's a love goddess, Hellori chimed in. She wouldn't keep you from talking to your partner, even if you did want to convert her. Okay, good point, which means I'm absolutely passing on that. The thought of having anyone I care about pray to me actually feels really gross now that I'm thinking about it, no offense. There was none, his god told him. Right up until you said no offense. God. It just feels so weird to think about. Ben went on, his face scrunching with the thought. Like, I don't think I'd even be into casual acquaintances praying to me, let alone Thera or any of her family or Delaire and any of the other dryads I know. Well, a shame for you, because the people you know in life are usually some of the first converts an ascended god gets, Hellori pointed out. The bond is already there, just changed. What else would you do for your starting bits of faith? Go without until everyone you know dies of old age and then try to get some believers converted? Because if your god wasn't proof enough, trying to grow from absolutely nothing is basically impossible. I don't think I needed to be dragged into that, Myriad chimed in, being ignored while Ben shrugged. I mean, even if I don't convert the people I know, I could get them to act as intermediaries to try and get me believers of my own on top of all of the other things I'd prepare before my death, such as demigod surgeries. More importantly, though, I've already started making soul tiles that pray to me, and I'm going to keep making them, so I should have a healthy little foundation of pseudo-believers set up and ready to go to power me for the start of my existence. MMH, I suppose that even if the faith per soul is extremely low, you more than make up for that with the volume of them you can create, Hellori conceded. But you will still need true believers to act as intermediaries on your behalf when acting in the world. Who's to say? If I ever need to do anything in the physical universe, I have all of my clones I could hopefully descend on, or, if I'm really lucky, maybe use without descending, since my hive mind and connect will both be minor divinities too, even if I don't awaken either. Seems to me there's a perfectly good chance I'll keep being able to work through them from the comfort of my realm. Myriad, do you hear your apostle? I've tried not to, but unfortunately, he's already mentioned this exact idea to me. I've had time to accept it. Don't worry, Ben said solemnly. When I become the most powerful, most beloved god in this universe, I promise I won't forget you little guys. He'd meant it as a joke, but to neither Myriad or Hellori it sounded that way. He already had 2 skills that would become proper divinities, and his realm access condemnation, and his actualization already meant that when he died, he would stand above any other god in those inherent domains of power. Even if he failed to awaken anything else, the future they saw for him looked grand, leaving only to see what would happen when he finally reached it for himself. MMH, what happened? Quox wondered as he slowly came to his senses. I've been being used somehow, but then... A jolt of fear ripped through him, unbecoming of any god and seeming without source, but it quickly faded, chalked up to a side effect of his continued confinement. He knew in that moment he was nothing more than a trapped soul, but he was less aware of how he was being used, only able to feel as he was stretched and warped with the demon he was trapped with, the knowledge relighting the hate in his heart. I'll get out of here, he told himself. I am a god. So long as my soul continues to burn, I won't be contained. I'll escape and get revenge on all of... Yep. Looks like I've properly reset you, an uncomfortably familiar voice said, bringing with it a new burst of fear before the god was able to squash it as he opened his eyes to see the mortal who'd murdered him standing there, looking curious as he went on. The lingering fear is unexpected. Did I do so much to you that it managed to imprint in your soul in a way I can't remove? Interesting. This requires some further experimentation. Quox started, trying to bring some proper rage to his voice without letting whatever deeper feelings that came from seeing the boy again shine through, but not getting to say more as the other held up a hand. Listen, I'm sure you have a lot you want to say about revenge and swearing to kill me, but I'm going to be honest, since you can't, I'm just going to get started here. Do your best to resist for as long as you can though. I'm hoping it will make for some good experience. What are you? Another thought he didn't get to finish. In the same instant, Ben was on him, a fist in the god's face and the first of many in the millennia there would be to come, feeling through the connection as the other lit up in pain and leaving him to hope he'd get some progress for it. Alright, may have taken a few real days, but let's see how this turns out. Ben told himself as he began the process of breaking Quox down anew, the god back to a place where he'd at least try to resist while Ben's physical body continued his work for the day, honing his skills the best he could while Delaire worked with Abel at the side, continuing on her own role of teacher while the other girl was there. Abel, you need to be patient and properly heat it up, his student told the other girl. It doesn't matter if you can hit it into shape. If you don't get it to the proper temperature, then the entire blade is going to be weak. To drive the point home, Delaire grabbed the last knife Abel had made and, taking the blade in her hands, snapped it in half with ease, the quality too low to withstand even the strength of the young girl who held it, leaving the one she was teaching to pout. I just tried to speed it up a bit. It's fine. You gotta be willing to try things. You can try what you want, but you need to get practice doing things right first before you experiment, she said firmly, and leaving Ben to do his best to keep a grin from his face from the sight of Delaire doing her best with her acting student, lest Abel take offense to it. Both were trying their best, and that was what mattered, leaving only seeing how much either would get from it in the end as they went on while he himself looked at his own efforts. Support the creativity of authors by visiting the original site for this novel and more. Nothing feels close enough. He had less than 2 weeks before he was going to need to start modifying souls across the world, which meant less than 2 weeks to try and snag another third-tier awakening, something that was feeling more and more impossible with every failure he had. For days, he'd been almost constantly attached to a god, inflicting what misery on it he could while time itself warped within the confines of his mind, yet it still wasn't enough, forcing himself to wonder if it ever would be. But as for anything else I can do, options are slim. Same with raising evil god of sacrilege. He'd reached a point in all of his more important skills that things like talent and effort had before significantly smaller factors than smashing his head against a proverbial mountain and expecting it to break first. Just endless, mindless training until at least one barrier would break for him. And then I modify my own soul for some more power again for what that will give me. Keep going with the face smashing and, well, it looks like finishing up Abel's job is going to be about a day or two away. Once that's done, then hopefully nothing else will be as long, but even if my mind doesn't give the sorts of experience I'm looking for some reason, I should have at least 3 sacrilege-aligned jobs to use to get through the next 3 third tiers, which means after that I should almost be done all of them and be able to finish all of my stupid jobs, and then just maybe getting my other awakenings will be easier. And it was almost enough to make him want a vacation, but a day off or 3 could be a little treat for himself if the war ended and he managed to live through it. In the meantime, what mattered was practice and trying to pass those last hurdles, focused on that until Abel paused in her own work, looking up briefly before focusing on him. Well, it's been fun, but it looks like I'm off, the other third tier told him, sounding disappointed and catching Ben off guard for the suddenness of it. What? Just like that? Yeah. Sounds like the perv got himself into some trouble, so I'm off to save him. Wait, you mean Faust? What happened? Don't know. I'll get the deets when I'm there. Still, thanks for hanging, number 2. I'll come play again when I get the chance. It was obvious enough she wasn't thrilled to go, and it looked like his student was just as disappointed. Reaching out to hug the older girl and visibly catching her by surprise right until Dallaire spoke up. But now who am I gonna be in charge of? Alright, off of me pipsqueak. No one's in charge of me. Now who am I going to beat at games? Hey, it was only a few times. Dallaire, ease up on the teasing, Ben told her. And Abel, well, be safe. You can't stay long enough to say goodbye to Thera and Sonia and Mora. No, sounds like they want me now. All right? He said, reaching out to ruffle her hair one more time and seeing how happy she looked for it. In that case, be safe, and if you ever want to come back for a while, well, you'll be welcome. Ah, this won't be the last you see of me, she said as she went over to his gates. When this world is safe, maybe I'll come retire out here. Ha, you should. Stonewall could use another third-tier kicking around. Until then, take care of yourself. You too, number 2. Tell everyone else I say bye, and try not to get offed while I'm not around. Ha, you got it. She left from there, instantly making the shop feel quieter for her absence while Dallaire did her best to hide her own disappointment. Even as she spoke up, is she going to be okay? Not only is she a third tier, she has the armor I specially made her. She'll be fine, Ben reassured, even if he wasn't sure he believed it when he considered the reason she'd said she was leaving. If Faust's own assignment had managed to be so bad that it now required the presence of a second third tier, then he couldn't begin to guess what dangers it held. What's wrong? Thera asked as she and Mora came through the gate, finding Dallaire clear in her moping, even if she didn't let it distract her from her work while Ben explained. Abel was called off, so she's disappointed she doesn't have someone to work with now, he said, getting to see a small frown flash across Mora's face as well, even while Thera nodded in understanding. Something urgent, then, if she didn't even get time to say goodbye? Apparently something to do with Faust. Not sure what though. That answer succeeded in making her frown too, the same implication obvious to her that was to him. If it was a problem bad enough to demand a second third tier, then it could be no simple thing, but she kept that thought to herself, instead walking over to the younger girl and rubbed her back, trying to give what comfort she could. It's all right. I'm sure she'll come by again. Yeah, but who knows how long that'll be. She was fun to have around. Abel was so expressive, an answer that threatened to make a laugh break out across his face. His student no doubt thinking of how Abel would react to both being taught by a younger girl, as well as frequently losing to her when they played together too, but he did his best to keep his amusement to himself, not wanting to make light of his student's sadness as Dallaire went on. Besides, working with someone else was fun. If it will cheer you up, then I can stay occasionally, Mora told her, lighting her up in an instant, even as he switched to look at both Thera and Ben. If that's all right? Of course it is, sweetheart, Thera said. I'm sure it will be a lot more fun than just watching me work all day. I still want to do that too. I like trying to help the healers. Well, anytime you want to stay with us for the day, then you're welcome to, Ben told him, not getting to say more as Dallaire instantly took over and latched onto the boy's arm. So you'll come tomorrow then? That should be fine. Great. I'll show you all the things I've been learning. Ha, we'll look forward to having you with us, Ben told him. But with that sorted, I should start cleaning up. You guys want to walk Dallaire home? We can do that, Thera told him, leaning in to kiss his cheek as she did. Just don't take too long, okay? I'll be right behind you. The three of them left after he said it, Dallaire excitedly talking to Mora about the day to come, her previous poor mood forgotten while Ben swept the floor, tidying just a bit with the end of the day as a way of finishing things. He knew he could make it faster with his magic. Normally he didn't just to make sure he built up the habit of cleaning up in his student, but it made for a peaceful way of ending things, giving him the chance to go over everything in a slightly different way, even if a different thought was left stuck in his head. What could have happened on Faust's quest? Abel hadn't exactly sounded urgent when she'd left, but it had also been clear she hadn't been given a real explanation either. leaving endless options for whatever the problem might have been. Was it just an issue with tracking that they needed another third tier for, or was whatever contender he was facing more than the shifter could handle? But if it's more than he could handle, then that might imply the things awakened to the third tier as well since coming to the world. He thought with a sigh. And if that's the case, well, I'll ask Myriad about it later tonight, but until then, evil god of sacrilege level increased. The grin on his lips was as instantaneous as the effects. The sacrilege he was constantly leaking for what privacy it would give strengthened for the level, while at the same time its range expanded too. His efforts finally bearing fruit. Stolen from Royal Road, this story should be reported if encountered on Amazon. Just over a week had been all it had taken to get him his newest level after his last, with the prior only taking 2 days after his awakening. He may have been impatient for every single moment of it, but that mattered less than the result. A new threshold had been broken, and in a time that would do nothing but panic the gods of the world once they knew. He'd reached the highest level of any skill that any mortal had ever claimed. And if the growth rate keeps up, then I can maybe expect my next level around, what? Maybe as little as another few weeks from now? No, I can't just assume a specific growth rate with so many other factors. It's still impossible for me to narrow down on what's going to be the most efficient method of getting sacrilege from Quax, and it's too soon to determine if erasing his memories and starting fresh had any effect or not. On the more positive side, if I take a new sacrilege-aligned job, then it should help a bit, but who's to say how much when I'm now officially deeper into the third tier than anyone else has ever gotten before? If the timing is around what I'm expecting, I should get that level just after I start modifying souls, but well, if I haven't gotten another awakening as it gets closer, then I'll have to do something that might get some attention. Until then, his new level meant new things to test, and with the repairs on Quax's mind still fresh enough, he had plenty of leeway to do exactly that as he finished cleaning and made his way home, the validation of his efforts leaving him a buzz. Myriad, I've got good news for me and bad news for you, Ben sang out when he arrived that night, instantly drawing the cube's attention. I don't want it. The day's been hectic enough as is. Why? Is it something to do with why Abel was sent off to help Faust? Oh, was she dragged into things? I suppose that makes sense given her power and tracking abilities. I'll have to look into whether anyone else was being sent with her. Okay. But what happened? The shifter went missing. He's normally good at keeping contact with either his handlers or his god, but there's been no response for a few days now, and given that he's, well, a rather important resource, discovering what happened to him is a rather high priority. Along with the implication that anything powerful enough to kill him is going to be a nightmare for the world as a whole. Well, yes, but as of the current moment we at least know he's alive. Otherwise he'd be up here with us. Not that that's much better, mind you, given it means that he might be being kept in some way that's keeping him from communicating. A result far worse than if he'd died. Fair. Anything powerful enough to hold him is going to be a nightmare. Well, keep me up to date if anything changes. I liked the guy well enough. It'd be a shame if anything happened to him. It would be a shame for this whole planet, Myriad groaned. But yes, I'll let you know. For now, what bad news do you have for me already? Oh, it's only bad news for your lot up here. Don't worry. That's exactly what I'm worried about. I leveled evil god of sacrilege again, he said with a bright grin, ignoring the last statement. You're looking at the world's first holder of a second-leveled third-tier skill. Myriad. You know, I'd been trying to prepare to hear that as best as I could, yet it still managed to horrify me. I don't think I want to see what'll become of you when you die and ascend. It'll be great. On a completely unrelated note, though, if I decided I wanted to deal with Eneth and Alencia, once and for all, would it be better to do so as a mortal or a god? Neither is a good option. Surely you understand that. I don't know, he teased. I think if I do it while I'm still mortal, it's going to technically be your problem instead of mine. No, it will be both of our problems. Try and I'm disowning you. You don't have it in you, you love me too much. Some days you make even liking you a stretch. Ha, whatever you say. Anyway, don't worry. I wouldn't actually do anything unless I was confident I had more power than anyone up there could possibly try to fight against. How could you tell me not to worry and then make such an incredibly worrying statement. I know it's too soon to judge since at this point I can't even say for sure if I can expect consistent growth, but it took 3.5 times as much time to get to the second level as it did the first. If that keeps up, then my third level will come a bit short of a month and my fourth would in 3.5 months, with no time before the next wave to get a fifth. And I mean, sure, that would be incredible, but it's not quite make myself an enemy of all of the gods of this world incredible. Of course, I could be wrong and it could be a lot faster, and even if it's not, I've got some hope about potential methods for increasing the growth rate that I just need to figure out a way to pull off. But yeah, I'd say don't stress for now. That entire little ramble did nothing but increase my stress level. MMH, you really should talk to someone about that. Is there a god of therapy on this world you could bother? It's not good to keep all of your issues locked inside. No, my problem is one specific issue standing in front of me, he sighed. I don't even know if I want to hear if you end up getting another level. I mean, if you don't want it, I don't have to bring it up. No, you have to bring it up. The only thing that would be worse than knowing would be not knowing until some other god decided to make it the cube's problem, but with it, he tried to look on the bright side. As horrific as it may have been, his apostle was instantly safer for that level from any deity who might have wanted to cause him harm, even if the way the boy talked continued to make it more than clear that any misgivings went both ways. Getting up to start dinner that night, Ben's course only changed as a knock came to the door, leaving him to find Cecily behind it with her foot in the way before he could close it again. Not so fast, the guild master told him. You already told me you wouldn't complain the next time I needed something. Well, in my defense, I hoped you'd forgotten. He sighed before opening it wider to let her in. You need me and Thera? I do. All right, come on. He led her to the living room where both she and Mora were relaxing, Sonia not home that night making it only 3, with his girlfriend sitting up when she saw who it was. Cecily, what brings you here? A quest. I only just got word, so I came here as soon as I could, but you're both being urgently requested to act as first ranks. Come tomorrow. I'm not sure how we could, Ben said innocently. Unless it's in or near Stonewall, that's pretty short notice. Then you should have done a better job of hiding how you use your minigates, and once again, you promised to be agreeable. Okay, yeah, I will. So what's the quest and how long will it take? Tracking, but as for how long, indeterminate. You are, however, already somewhat involved, so I would expect you to have some interest in how it turns out. Somewhat involved? Okay, I see where this is going. We're being sent to help look for Faust then? Correct. In the days since Abel had left, he'd gotten no word of the Shifter's discovery nor ascension, meaning he was still left missing, and as one of the more valuable individuals on the planet, it was easy to understand why they'd gather some more first-ranked adventurers and even included another third tier in the form of himself. And despite their brief meeting, Ben couldn't deny that he hoped the other was all right. He'd been a decent enough man to talk to, but more than that, he empathized with the other's struggles, with all he'd been put through and the expectations that were placed on him. And even if he's not dead yet, there's no way of telling how things will change the longer we wait. All right, fine. I'm in, he groaned. How about you, Thera? This tale has been unlawfully lifted from Royal Road. Report any instances of this story if found elsewhere. Obviously, it's been a while since I've gotten any proper adventure work, and this sounds important. Wonderful. Thanks for making this somewhat easy, Cecily told them. Given the short notice, I'm sure you both have arrangements to be made, so I'll leave you to it. Good luck, both of you. She let herself out from there, leaving the 3 of them once more and Ben to collect his thoughts. Even if it wasn't desirable, there were some benefits to it, same as his last quest. Namely, it would be a good way to test himself. If there was a demon or group of demons on the world capable of restraining or controlling a third tier for entire days of time, then they were a danger he could try to go all out against to see where he'd stack up, a good test for things to come. Leaving only the issue of whatever sort of power set a creature capable of handling Faust could have, but, well, I can make my guesses, but it's not going to matter till I actually see them. Worst of all would be if it really is another third tier. Okay, doesn't matter. For now, there's other things to sort out. All right, I'll get dinner sorted quick, and then I guess we'll need to do some running around. Ben sighed. After we eat, I'll run over to see if Fontesh can handle watching Mora, and then you can go tell wherever you're working tomorrow that you won't be available. Okay, sounds good. Mora. Sorry we're both going to need to leave you on such short notice. Are you going to be okay? I will. Fontesh is nice and Dallaire keeps me busy. Ha, well, hopefully we won't be gone for too long, Ben said as he reached out to ruffle the boy's hair. But try to have fun while we're gone. Okay, kiddo? I will. I like the dryads. Good. In that case, I'll get food started and then we can sort all of this out. MMH, you worried at all? Thera asked him once they were alone in bed. Ben giving the most honest answer he could. Genuinely not sure. Like, Faust is alive, we know that much, but as for how he could have gone missing, from my one attempt, I can say he's pretty resilient to mind attacks, so he shouldn't be being controlled by any sort of mind spell, but on the other hand, he's been having sleeping problems, so it feels way too possible he could have just been forced to sleep for the past few days to keep him docile for whatever reason, but other than that, there really aren't too many ways to keep him both trapped as well as unable to contact the gods when all that takes is a thought. There's not enough information to make any guesses, which I'm not a huge fan of. Well, if it is some mind effect, then dealing with everything's going to be on you, she teased. I can't imagine anyone else who's going to be with us would be as remotely as resistant as you. Maybe you'll even end up having to fight me again. God, don't even joke about that. I thought I was going to die when that happened. Hey, you won, didn't you? After a ton of planning and suffering, yeah. Well, you'll have a much easier time now if it happens again. Not a huge fan of how you're trying to scare me out of sleeping. Ha, it will all be fine, Ben. We'll do our best. Like always. Yeah, I know we will, he muttered. It's just, I'll be a lot more comfortable when the world stops constantly falling apart around us. She didn't answer, sleep capturing her and letting Ben take a few minutes to watch her rest before he carefully got up and slipped out of both the room and the house as a whole, off to the shop. After all, he didn't know how long he was going to be gone for, but given it might have been days, there was progress still he needed to make before morning would come for them, and after getting to the shop, he slipped on his jacket for as much growth as he could claim. Oh, thank God, he muttered, reaching his goal just before the sun began to rise. Just made it. Myriad, I need you. Finished my job and don't know if you heard, but I'm being set off to help find Faust. Tell Fix that I'm taking a new one early since I don't know how long I'll be gone for, so you guys are going to have to work around that a bit when it comes to my next job run because I don't want to spend potentially days out in the woods not getting any experience I can. Thank you. With that bit done, he let himself take a seat, no longer creating new souls to reduce the strain on his own, while taking only a single moment to bask in the joy that was having finished Outsider after the insane level of experience it had cost him before touching his job crystal once more, letting him look over all of the new options available to him as he did. Available jobs. Trap User. Craftsman Alchemy Path. Craftsman Artistic Path. Craftsman Blacksmith Path. Craftsman Cooking Path. Craftsman Stonecrafts Path. Craftsman Sewing Path. A mathematician, a high marksman, a high destruction mage, beginner puppeteer, assassin, cycler, a beginner dancer,
Entrée.
soul creator, eldritch mind user, a king of mana, king of stamina, a mind breaker, intelligence embodiment, king of vitality, therapist, total self, degenerate body user, divine body user, demonic body user, foul tank, resistant tank, fallen actualizer, immortal realm actualizer. A few he'd seen during his last job run. His list had grown considerably thanks to all of the master jobs he'd taken with only one a mystery to him. While it had been unlocked after taking Body Master, whatever total self was for hadn't been made explicitly obvious, but that didn't matter. Counting them all, there were 4 jobs there he was confident he could use to rush through a 3rd tier, with all of his new sacrilege-aligned options as well as his actualization ones. The fact that skill in particular is linked to how fast I can think is extra convenient, but for now, what to actually take. He hadn't given it much thought because before the quest, it hadn't felt like it would matter. If he hadn't spent the night overstraining his soul to try and get it done, then he would have instead gotten it finished the morning the next day instead, with arrangements to have at least 3 different groups of 3rd tiers ready for him to work through. Considering that itself meant 9 jobs for him, Whatever to go through next hadn't been of the highest priority. And I guess it still technically isn't, considering that so long as I'm not killed, I doubt I'll be out there for more than a week, but yeah, it really does feel different knowing I'm just taking one right now. Makes the choice feel like it has more weight. Okay, screw it, I'll make things easier on Fixed when it comes to arranging things for when I get back. By which I mean make things better for me. Myriad, sorry? You haven't reached out to Fixed yet. Have you? Okay, well I changed my mind, so don't. I decided I'm gonna take something that I should be able to finish by myself by the time the quest ends. Even if it means I might need to spend a couple extra hours on it. Forgive me for not caring about keeping to the letter of a deal I was basically cornered into. Besides, I have so many options currently that there's no conceivable way I run out before I run out of third tiers to help. If you think you guys can arrange a new job run for me within the next hour, then I'll hold off. High Marksman. Name: Ben Hef. Race: human. Titles: Apostle of Myriad, the Forgotten One, Miracle Maker, Skill Learner, Enemy of Aneth, Trial Defier, Trial Breaker, Godslayer, Monster, Madman, God Killer, Threat, the Mad Apostle, Destined Holder of Connect, God of Destruction, Creator of Life, Awakener, Maniac, Brutal Blacksmith, Defier of Gods, Title Holder, Enemy of Valencia, Great Teacher, Student of Helori, Myriad's Monster, Outsider Slayer, Demigod Slayer, Transgressor, Destined Holder of Mental Symbiosis, Destined God of Alien Thought Structure, Destined Holder of Soul Production, Job Holder, Destined Holder of Actualization, Enemy of Duna, Demon Slayer, World Slayer, Demigod of Growth and Gain, First Human God, First of the Faith. Jobs: High Marksman, LV0. Previous jobs: Apprentice Craftsman, Craftsman, Priest, Enchanter, Mind User, Magic Item Maker, Magic Weapon Maker, High Enchanter, Fractured Mind User, Tree Tamer, High Craftsman, Apprentice Mage, True Mage, Tank, Heretic, Adventurer, Divine Heretic, Kin, Master Craftsman, Master Enchanter, Scholar, Connected Enchanter, Infernal Craftsman, Marksman, Destruction Mage, Material Mage, High Material Mage, Profane Enchanter, Master Material Mage, Impious Creator, Mind Master, Master Adventurer, Otherworldly Craftsman, Material Creator, Master of All, Ritual Enchanter, Holy Craftsman, Cursed Item Maker, Actualizer, Summoned Enchanter, Destructive Craftsman, Soul Mage, Freak Mind User, Unholy Thinker, Polymath, Alien Mind, Soul User, Soul Master, Evil Soul User, Soul Defiling Gardener, High Actualizer, World Killer, Connect Master, Abysmal Connector, Master of Destiny, Hive Brain, Divine Enchanter, Inclination Master, Slayer, Judge, Holy Adversary, Title Master, Beneficiary, Divine Kin, Multiversal Material Mage, Expert, Body User, High Tank, King of Intelligence, Body Master, Master Tank, Primordial Heretic, God-Defiling Gardener, Master Actualizer, Outsider. Attributes: Vitality, 10939. The Vitality Recovery Rate, 603/HR. Mana, 29991. Mana Recovery Rate, 3,257 per minute. Strength, 8772. Agility, 3337. Stamina, 18653. Intelligence, 158,446. Affinities: Light 3, Life 2, Fire 4, Water 3, Air 4, Earth 2, Death 3, Dark 1, Space 4, Time 5. Resistances: the story has been taken without consent. If you see it on Amazon, report the incident. Light, 68. Life, 72. Fire, 75. Water, 69. Air, 66. Earth, 81. Death, 78. Dark, 85. Space, 63. Time, 61. Blessed Skills: Unending Crafting LV9 *. Divine Enchanting LV9 *. Eldritch Mind LV0***. Passive skills. Evil God of Sacrilege LV2***. A bind. Integrated Demonic Body LV9. Divine Defense Enhancement LV0***. Perfect Absorption Resistance LV0***. All Affinity Resistance Enhancement LV9. A Bite Enhancement LV9. Piercing Resistance LV9. Artisan's Soul ***. Unnatural Intelligence Enhancement LV8**. Blood Regeneration LV9. Unending Extraction Enhancement LV1**. Soul Affinity LV8**. Tier 2 Modifier Compatibility **. Deep Material Sense LV1**. Flavor Enhancement LV6. Balance Enhancement LV7. Soul Expansion LV9. Defiler of Ambrosia. Destruction Affinity LV9**. Evil Affinity LV9**. Soul Resilience LV9. Defense Inclination LV5. A Vitality Enhancement LV4. A Vitality Recovery Rate Enhancement LV4. False Ben. Integrated Divine Body LV6. Mithril Blood. A Mana Enhancement LV4. A Mana Recovery Rate Enhancement LV4. Strength Enhancement LV3. Stamina Enhancement LV3. Bludgeoning Resistance LV2. Agility Enhancement LV1. Flesh Regeneration LV1. Fracture Resistance LV1. Immortal Realm Actualization Enhancement LV9. A Multiversal Inclination LV1. Alien Sense LV1. Active Skills. Stealth LV2. Deep Connection LV9**. Cycling LV3. Marksmanship LV9. A Material Manipulation LV9**. Swimming LV3. Dance LV3. Hive Mind LV9**. Rule Bender LV1. Aim LV9. Esoteric Actualization LV9**. Soul Source LV8**. Condemnation LV9. Mind Break LV6**. Realm Access LV7. Blessings. Myriad's Blessing. Analia's Blessing. Hilori's Blessing. Galwax's Blessing. Elvet's Mana Regeneration Blessing. Enetha's Blessing. Earth Pantheon's Blessing. Life Pantheon's Blessing. Dark Pantheon's Blessing. Olencia's Blessing. Nair's Blessing. Yuzu's Mana Regeneration Blessing. Child of Chaos. On's Blessing. Fixtha's Blessing. Passive Pantheon's Blessing. Duna's Blessing. Jagel's Blessing. Non-Affinitied Pantheon's Blessing. Crafting Pantheon's Blessing. Trials. Trial of Analia and Talona. Trial of the Dead God. Earth Tower. Life Tower. Dark Tower. Non-Affinitied Tower. Craftsman's Tower. Wait, that's what attributes it raises? Okay, kind of lame. Considering that when he'd taken the marksman job originally, he hadn't had access to his conscious mind. What it had grown was left as a surprise to him, but benefits to agility were an unexpected disappointment compared to everything else it could have been. Even if he tried to look on the bright side. Omicron Betio. Considering that both my aim and my marksmanship are at their 9th levels, this will get me a bit closer to awakening them, even if the bonuses aren't great. This is fine. Just a nice, easy little job to fill my time while I'm on this quest. By being the best at finishing them on the entire planet. Genuinely, when I die, I should become a god of jobs on top of everything else too. I think I deserve it. I wonder if something like Job Inclination would be possible as a skill? I know Job isn't a skill class, but surely there's something I could get and work up to at least the 2nd tier, right? Then maybe I could find one for titles too. His god asked sarcastically, even if it led to Ben giving the question some serious thought. Could I? The two main ways I see for that would be to either become a god of just everything or else to somehow unlock an inclination that would cover everything, and admittedly, that would be pretty darn cool. You know what, I'll think on it a bit. If the 3rd wave doesn't kill me, then I think I deserve to become a god of everything, don't you? Too late, already added it to my list of goals for if the war ends. Now that that's done though, time to head back. I've got breakfast to make, Mora to drop off, and a quest to go suffer through. Food, camping gear, materials of all sorts. Okay, I should be good. He couldn't help but mentally go over his inventory as they walked through Analia to its gate network, considering they'd possibly be gone for quite a few days. Even if none of that mattered too much. Materials he could materialize, camping supplies of all sorts could be materialized, and even food could be materialized, though the options on that last front would be disappointing enough to leave hunting as a far better choice if it came down to it. Still, he was as ready as could be, even if that still left the bit of dread that any quest carried, as he mentally contended with both whether he was wasting his time on it and if whatever risk it carried was worth facing in the end, with both answers coming to a disappointing yes. As much as he didn't enjoy quests and believed there were better ways of spending his time, he couldn't deny that Faust was worth working to save for the value he could offer the world alone, nor could he deny his need to occasionally challenge himself against greater enemies. Sparring with Abel had been a decent experience, but putting one's life on the line was always going to be different in a way that could be far more valuable when it came to judging his true level of skill and potential as he continued to grapple with whether he had any chance at living through what was to come. I'm still not in the complete state I'd want to be. I still want a couple more levels out of my sacrilege and to get my connect to the 3rd tier at the very least, but this here isn't fighting own. This is fighting whatever managed to be powerful enough to handle a 3rd tier. That's probably manageable, right? His god spoke up as they stepped through to the network, looking for the particular gate they'd be heading through beyond it. Yeah, will do, Myriad told him before going on, sounding like he'd just remembered something in the fakest way he could pull off. I don't like where this is going. His god laughed as they crossed through, seeing the gathered crowd of other adventurers waiting. Then out with it. Good luck. Wait, authority? He asked back in growing horror. You don't mean, you're a bastard? Ben thought to the heavens above. You're such a huge bastard that I'm finding every copy of your holy text that's ever been written and using my magic to stealth edit it to call you Myriad the Bastard every time you're mentioned by name in it. Gods shouldn't be so spiteful. How's it going to be fine when you literally waited until right now to tell me that I'm supposed to be leading these people? When it came to experience, he was sure everyone there would have had more than him. When it came to authority, he had them beat. He was a 3rd tier, a person destined for godhood. How could there be any greater authority than that? He doubted he'd get many arguments, but the statement still stopped him in his tracks. How did this pass? Enough up there, hate me. Why would anyone want me leading? Wow, I can't believe I need to somehow make sure I earn even less trust from the gods in the future. I thought I was already comfortably near the bottom, but I guess there's always a place lower, Myriad said innocently, knowing better than anyone how little effort Ben put to that particular front and left him to groan. Is there going to be literally any help for me? God, fine, I'll get it done. Another thing on the to-do list. If the war ends and I live, I need to immediately quit this stupid guild. Everything okay? Thera asked from the side, watching Ben's face twitch from the quick exchange with his god. No. Myriad just politely informed me that I'm the one who's apparently in charge of leading this group. BFFF. Not funny. It's a little funny. It's divine harassment. Can you honestly, genuinely say you haven't done enough to your god to deserve a bit of that? I can say a lot of things. I guess this means I should try to look at least semi-professional about this then. He sighed, forcing himself to stand a bit straighter and hide the annoyance on his face as he approached the crowd of over 20 people, looking at their collective skills and reading their thoughts as he went through them all, narrowing in the priest Myriad had told him about and finding the man not only held a map of the sites Faust had gone to but had also acted as his handler, a person to gather what information he needed and worked on his behalf, leaving him to make a beeline to him. The narrative has been illicitly obtained. Should you discover it on Amazon, report the violation. Peek, he greeted, holding out a hand while the other looked at him, startled to be so suddenly approached. I'm Ben. I believe you were told about me. Ah, yes, of course, he said, both reaching out to shake and bowing in one motion, well aware of Ben's position. It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming to help. It's in the job, but I'll do my best and I'll make sure everyone else does too. For now, let me get just a couple things straight. No one else was with him, correct? That's right. And when was the last time he was seen? Ah, my goddess Velmet had kept a small watch on him, but we only know he went missing somewhere after the fourth location he'd gone to look at. So he could be anywhere from his journey to the fifth or sixth. Okay, that's not bad, he nodded, acting like he hadn't already stolen that information from the other's thoughts. Which means the only issue is getting out there, but I see we were given a space mage, so it should be fine. Not Steph or Pato though. Bit of a shame that I'm not seeing anyone I actively know. Just people I've copied skills onto rings before, but whatever. It saved him the trouble of being recognized and was a good group to take advantage of how he could share knowledge, so he didn't exactly mind, even if he couldn't help but think having a few people already on his side would ease any difficulty of keeping control over that crowd. Epsilones. Nothing I can do about that though, so for now, better to properly get started and hopefully I can impress enough for whatever respect I can pull. Knowing he could put it off no longer, he raised the ground beneath him to make a platform, drawing their collective attention and speaking up as eyes came to him. All of you, my name is Ben, also known as the Eldritch Mindholder, and I will be leading this search, he said, using the title Faust had suggested to try and imply his position as a third tier without outright saying it. Should any issues arise during it that you can't handle yourself, then you come to me. I expect all of you have been informed, but our specific goal is to find the third tier Faust, who's gone missing during his own expedition. Our goal is not to complete what he set out for. Having said that, it's safe to assume that anything powerful enough to restrain him and keep him from contacting any god is going to be a danger even to a crowd like this. At worst, it might even be an invader at the third tier themselves, so be prepared. If it comes down to a battle, then so be it, but if we can escape with the shifter, then we'll do it and allow the gods to determine how best to handle whatever it was that had him. Now, are there any questions? He got a few looks, but no one spoke up, leaving him to nod as he went on. Good, in that case, let's quickly arrange things. I understand you have your specific parties, but there's 4 trackers here and they in particular need to be protected, so Edel and Zav, you're with Tuun. Wash with Haunter and Stolas. Mozanna, you're with Dash. He went on as he said it, pointedly looking at every person as he said their name and assigned them a group based on their skill distributions as well as current parties, trying to keep people together the best he could while also doing his best to make it look like he'd memorized who each person was beforehand and succeeding on the front at least, their thoughts telling him that more than a few were surprised to be recognized so easily by the time he got to the end. Finally, our space mage, Quinn. For you, I have a slightly different question. You've been given our destination. I have, yes. How long do you think it would take to arrive under your power? Depending on how long everyone takes to move through each of my portals, it could be a few hours, she told him. They aren't cheap to sustain. She was wearing neither a mana nor buff bracelet on her wrist like a few others in the party did. Leaving him to nod as he pulled some out for the 10, he saw missing them before handing them out. Wear these, all of you. If you don't know what they are, well, the others here who already have them can give you the finer details, but what you mainly need to know is that they can replenish your mana at a constant rate, even if you should avoid using them in day-to-day life. Now, with this, how long do you think you can get it down to? He felt her think, evaluating what she could do with the aid of a tool she'd only heard of but never gotten to try herself before looking up at the end with confidence in her eyes. I'm comfortable saying this should bring it down to around half an hour. I don't want to assume more without trying it first. Well, you're about to get plenty of practice, so if everyone is ready, let's get on our way. Getting there was just the first leg of their journey after all. Once out, they wouldn't be able to use their space mage to shorten things, being instead forced to retrace Faust's steps and hopefully find wherever his journey had gone wrong. He did his best to keep a careful eye on everyone as Quinn opened her portals, watching them with his various senses as well as Connect, stretched out as far as it could go to keep track of all they thought and felt, finding himself doing well enough so far. None of them felt openly hostile having him as their leader, though a few were curious about him too. There were a few small flashes of recognition from a couple he'd copied skills from in the past, but overall, the biggest issue any had was the fact they didn't recognize him, something they all found odd considering their own high standings in the guild, and was made all the more so when they considered the importance of their mission. They were off to search for one of the world's third tiers, a task of unequal value. How could the role of leading them not fall on a more widely known, accomplished adventurer? And yet, despite those few misgivings, they were all professional despite that. While not having the sort of discipline that would be forced into any member of the planet's different militaries, they were valued members of the guild, and while both first and second ranks had to do with whether they held awakened skills, getting to the third rank demanded at least a bit of professionality that Ben hadn't always gotten to witness in anyone ranked fourth or lower. They had all been brought on for a specific job, and while there was a risk of disobedience from them, so long as he properly explained why they'd be doing certain things, he could count on them to act appropriately. With a few even already on his side after his brief introduction. While he hadn't outright said it, some had caught on by how he'd titled himself that he might have been a third tier, albeit one they hadn't heard of before, and distributing his mana and buff bracelets to all who hadn't already been given one had been a good look as well, immediately showing the worth of the action as they went. While not as smooth as some cohesive group used to marching in formation, they were all fast enough going from one portal to the next as their space mage opened them that they arrived at the fourth site just below the 30-minute mark, a far better time than any of them had initially expected, even if that left the issue of how much there was still to go. It was anywhere between there and the sixth site that Faust had been sent to track. From that he'd gone missing, and with no more information than that, it meant they'd need to walk it to give their trackers any hope of finding anything, with the only option being to start there. All right. This is the last confirmed location of the true Shifter Faust. For now, do your best to find whatever signs of him you can, but if you have any specific questions about what you might be looking for, go to Peak since he's the one most familiar with who we're looking for among us. Anyone who's not specialized in tracking, for now stay in place. It's going to be hard enough to follow the path of a shapeshifter already. We don't need to make it even more complicated for them by disturbing the rest of the scene by looking around if we've got nothing to contribute. Understood. He got agreement through both yeses and nods as their four trackers began to move, looking around the area and talking amongst themselves while Ben observed it too, both through his senses along with everyone else's as he took it all in, seeing the destruction that was left behind. This content has been misappropriated from Royal Road. Report any instances of this story if found elsewhere. No bodies were present from whenever it had happened, but a long enough time in the woods was always going to ensure that was the case. Scavengers that had tagged along during the exodus of hundreds of different planets, filling those lands, ensuring there was always something to find to be to their taste, but despite that, and the effects of time wearing it away, signs of the battle that took place were still there. Burn marks from magic, stones shaped in ways that would never be found in nature, trees broken down, and slash marks speaking of weapons. Even if it was slowly being weathered away in whatever days or weeks it had been since it had happened, judging from the total area of damage he was seeing, it was enough to make estimates about how many had been involved. 50 to 100 from the looks of it, going to depend on skill level, but the greater issue is that I can't tell how many would be from whatever expedition was sent out here compared to how many demons they had to have faced, but if it was a contender, it might have only been one. I'll have to ask for clarification later. Other than that, no survivors from it or any other site. I suppose if there had been, then both me and Faust would have been given more information to work off of. Oh God. Since I'm in charge, I'm responsible for these people's lives, aren't I? Goddamn, not a fan of that. He was sure they were all assigned for the job because they were equally powerful and competent, but he still didn't want anyone dying under his watch, something that was all too possible with the little bit of information he held. There was no telling what could go wrong if they found Faust, nor any way to know what sacrifices might need to be made to save the third tier. As he looked around, having seen into their memories of the lives they had waiting for them, could he in good conscience sacrifice any one of them to save one life? Supposedly it would be worth it. He knew most there understood that too. But just the thought left a foul taste in his mouth that only grew worse when the four trackers walked over, their expressions telling him enough. No luck then? He asked, with one stepping forward to answer. Not exactly. We believe we'd found him based on a few clues that would suggest a creature had been changing its shape, but the issue is the final one. Something capable of flight. If his journey to the next location was in the skies, then finding him is going to be all but impossible. Incredible. Just freaking fantastic. Okay, he said, trying to keep the disappointment from his face. This is going to change things just a bit then. Quinn, you'll be taking us to the next point where the trackers will begin searching again. If we don't find any new signs of Faust, then we'll come back and do a proper search of the woods between here and there, but if we do find any, we'll know we can keep going and either follow them or... Assuming he's flown off again, do the same thing for the sixth site. And hope he didn't fly off from there, because if he did, who knows what direction he might have gone off in. Just the thought made him want to pinch his brow as he was left wondering how long they could be out there searching if he had flown off again, but he felt general agreement for the plan from the minds of the others, and that was enough for him, and at the very least, cutting out the need to walk between the sites would reduce their time out there if Faust really had made it to the last one. Meaning they just needed to see where he'd ultimately made it, and with their space mage opening a new portal they were off, ready to see whatever the next location had in store. At the fifth site, it was the same story. Signs of Faust investigating, taking different shapes to do it, but ultimately flying off once he'd gotten whatever he'd needed and going off to begin his journey to the next location, leaving the rest of them in a similar boat as Quinn opened more portals to go through, taking them on their way to what should have been around the final known destination of his journey, and left Ben's fingers crossed as the trackers began their search. "Got it," one said, the rest looking in agreement. "He was here. All right, that's something." It meant they wouldn't need to backtrack, at least. No need to search out for where between the 2 points he might have been brought down in his aerial form, or worse, where he might have diverted course. But it did leave a different issue present along the same line that needed to be addressed before anything else. And from here, did he fly off again? No, if we're right, then it looks like he went off on foot. Thank God. Thank God. All right, hopefully he decided to keep that up the rest of the way, but for now, let's go. You four take the lead, and if anything comes up, the rest of us will cover you. It meant a trek through the forest with no way to tell how long it would take, being all the longer for the size of their group, but they had no choice. While Faust could go as fast as his legs could carry him, they had to be conscious of one another as they went, needing to go at a consistent speed and, more importantly, take breaks, with the day nearing its end marking a big one. With consistent cover provided from the treetops, the woods were never bright, but it was still plain enough the sun was beginning to set, and with their trackers giving no inclination that they'd be stopping anytime soon, Ben filled his role as their leader, judging it was time to stop before it grew to dark. "All right, everyone, we're setting up camp here for the night," he called out once they came across a space just clear enough to set up tents. "Each group, select 2 of your members to stand watch, with one taking the first half of the night and the other the second. The trackers are excluded from this given the importance of their role, but if things come to it, anyone besides them who doesn't end up on a watch today will be on tomorrow's. My stamina is high, so I'll be up all night. Should you need anything, just let me know, but for now, begin sorting out whatever arrangements you need." With the plan laid out, everyone began setting up their tents, Ben making quick work of his and Thera's own before he pulled 2 meals from his rings, giving her one while she looked at him. "You didn't sleep last night either, did you?" "No, but I feel fine. Physically a bit tired, but nothing mentally. So kicking my feet up will be enough." "MMH fine, but if that changes, you better wake me up. I'll be a lot less confident about how this is going to go if you start falling asleep while we search tomorrow." "Will do. But for now, what do you think?" "I think those 4 didn't mention anything about whatever he was tracking. Probably a good reason for that," Ben sighed. "Faust was sent out to do it for a reason. No matter how good they are, he's going to be a lot better, and whatever traces this thing may have left, they're going to be a lot older than his by this point. Might not be much left for them to look for. Which also means we still don't know what we're getting into." "Yep, same as when we started this. Still, the fact that we found him at all is a good sign, and, even if it's not much, following him should essentially mean following whatever he was tracking to. Hopefully, as we get closer, they'll be able to see something that might give us some sort of clue about what could be responsible for all of this. You might be reading a stolen copy. Visit Royal Road for the authentic version." "Yeah, what? A demon covered in sharp claws, and is maybe an archmage on top of everything else?" Thera asked, having seen what signs of magic had been left at the other sites, same as him. "I'm personally hoping that was more to do with whoever was killed off fighting back. If it is an archmage, ugh, then we'll worry about that then. For now, it would be nice to assume it's something a bit more manageable." "Something a bit more manageable wouldn't be able to do anything to Faust," Thera pointed out. "Please don't attack me with your facts and logic. I'm trying to hope here." "Ha! If he's still not dead, then that's plenty of good news already. Besides, I think you've been doing a pretty good job so far." "Ugh, Another thing I'm hating. Now that I'm responsible for them, if anyone gets killed while we try to save Faust, then that's on me. No, if anything, it's on the gods who arranged it. Ben, everyone who came here has to have known it would be dangerous. And yet, I'm still the sucker in charge. Then we'll both just have to do our best, she told him, leaning in to kiss his cheek. For now, though, I'm going to turn in. If it does end up looking like you're going to die in the middle of the night, do me a favor and scream as loud as you can. Oh, don't worry, I will. She gave him one final smile before slipping into the tent, leaving him to send a part of himself up to bother his god, while his physical body moved to the middle of where everyone had set up the rest of their sleeping arrangements to build a small fire, it being the best location to reach out with his skill to survey the environment while the rest of them on watch slowly joined, taking seats with him as he politely nodded. Good work out there today, he said, trying to be encouraging given his present role to the fore with him. Being able to eliminate so much distance at once is a good sign. Hopefully wherever he ended up won't be too much farther from here. If he wants to be found, Zov sighed, a sentiment the others there seemed to share to a degree. Not exactly the most serious third tier, is he? Wash added. At least from the sounds of it. You all think he really has as many kids as the rumors say. Wouldn't doubt it, a third added. I've worked with one and met another. World's not so small for that to be an easy coincidence. Hell, wouldn't be shocked if I'd run into more at one point and it just never came up. He is a third tier, the last joined in. If he were dead, we'd already know, but is it even possible to trap the guy? Makes you wonder if he just doesn't want to be found. No, Ben said firmly. I've met him and I can say with confidence that you're all wrong. I don't deny that he likes having kids. Let that speak for himself. But he has a real responsibility to the world. He's worked as hard as he can and he's not going to run away. Now, if you did want to hate on a third tier, I'd recommend the immortal Rook. The guy's an absolute bastard and he'd kill you if he thought it would give him a chance to get in someone's pants. Plus, here we are after the second wave and the guy's been missing in action for months now. Just a completely worthless waste of a person, worthy of zero respect. He declined to mention his own part in making that man go missing, viewing it as largely irrelevant given the others' overall actions, even if the comments got him some eyes, with Wash speaking up. You've met a lot of third tiers then? A few. And when you introduced yourself, you said you were the Eldritch Mind Holder. Not even second tiers introduce themselves by their skill. Should we take it dash? You can, he said, not wanting it spelled out so clearly, even if he could feel it change their impressions of him, instantly becoming more impressed as they tried to judge his age and finding that, even without knowing his race, he seemed young. Don't mind it too much. The only thing that matters is finding Faust and all of us making it home safe after. A third tier, though, Vox started, looking like he was seeing a celebrity, which Ben had to suppose he technically only wasn't because word about him had yet to really spread across the world, at least for that particular accomplishment. It was surprising enough for people to learn he was an apostle, but now he was one of a group of only 13. All of their divine destinies carrying an implied level of fame to go with them enough to create awe in even the group around him who'd surpassed their limits to a lesser extent by becoming second tiers. Would you mind if we ask you some questions? Not at all. There might be some things I can't say, but feel free to ask away. It was a decent enough way to pass the time after all, and even if they would only be working together for a short while, it wouldn't hurt to try and show a somewhat approachable attitude, leaving that how the evening passed until, as one, the group around him perked up, their senses honed from their years adventuring, telling something Ben himself had found as well. Something was coming and at high speeds. So, this freaking sucks. No luck then? Myriad asked when Ben arrived, watching his apostle collapse to the ground in response. We know he made it to the 6th site you guys gave us and continued on from there. We've even been able to keep following his trail, only needed to stop to sleep, but the biggest problem is that you're still a bastard for putting me in charge of these people. I didn't put you in charge of anyone, I just neglected to mention that you were in charge. There's a difference. Ugh. When someone put my name in the pot, you should have told them no. I hate this. Are you doing a bad job? No, I think I'm doing all right. Then what is the problem? The fact that I'm now responsible for all of these people is pretty high on the list, I'd say. Ben, that's genuinely just a part of life. Besides, it's a good experience for you. If you're going to be a god one day, leading is somewhat involved. Really? From what I've seen of a lot of them up here, it can just as easily mean sitting up here with a smug sense of superiority to all of us lowly mortals. Rude. Not you, although I am curious about how much leading you'd say you do too. I offer spiritual guidance. I'd say that's pretty close. Funny, whenever I've offered spiritual guidance, I've never had a chance of getting someone killed if I make a mistake. I must have been doing it wrong. Are you planning on just complaining to me about this all night long? Technically no. I'm also staying up to watch the camp in case anything happens and doing my best to make a good impression on some of the others also on guard. So, determined to spend the night being a pain in the ass? Got it. In that case, I'll send a quick alert about what you've found so far, given that someone insists on blocking the average god's view. If the collective gods of this world were at least 10% cooler about me, I probably wouldn't have to. PFFF, whatever you say. With the update sent off though came a change to the realm, a new figure instantly appearing and leaving Myriad to briefly freeze before speaking up. Velmet, what brings you here? He asked the woman, holding an appearance that reminded Ben of Raelia's upper half, barring his acquaintance's reptilian traits, and only kept from commenting on it as the woman spoke up. You've finally given me a report about my believer, of course I showed up, she said, sounding almost indignant before focusing on Ben. So you still haven't found anything? The author's narrative has been misappropriated. Report any instances of the story on Amazon. No, he said, finding the same sudden worry in himself as he sped up his frame of reference to flash out his soul and read her mind for more context as to just who she was, only for it to be squashed as he looked deeper. An ascended god, one who had been a mortal back before her world had been lost. Her slight resemblance to Raelia made sense. He was in the presence of the one who'd created her paternal race. The goddess before him had been the soul mage who'd created the beast form holders. With the fact that she was a soul mage creating an instant worry that was put an end to the moment he checked. For even as she stood before him, unlike the ones within the mortal realm, she couldn't see his soul. At least not as she was. It was clear that if he'd allowed it, she would have had an easier job checking his than Hellori, but she didn't seem to be putting in the effort, and even if she tried, he judged his sacrilege to be good enough to get in the way of her fully divine eyes, with mortality seeming to be a strength in the case of both Yuzu and Elvit. Their lack of a fully divine nature due to them still being mortal actually left them harder to block. But while that meant the secret of his new sacrilege level wouldn't be getting out quite yet, that didn't mean there wasn't more surprising secrets to be found. All of them he tried to keep from reacting to with her right there, lest his own poking around was to be found out as he instead went on, giving her the courtesy of a fuller answer, since she didn't seem to be one of the deities who were actively hostile to him. We've confirmed that he'd gotten to the 6th location and we've continued to track him from there. But other than that, we haven't found anything yet. Still, we're doing our best. Of course you are, that's what you were brought on for, she told him, only getting some leeway from Ben for the comment because he could feel the worry in her heart. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be working faster. I understand you're worried, but my adventurers need to sleep. In another 6 hours they'll get up and we'll go again, but until then, if they don't get their rest, they'll be in a worse position to help. Surely you understand this. He watched her deflate just a bit before rubbing her face, less worried about maintaining whatever dignity being a god supposedly held when she herself had once been mortal, however long ago that had been. You're right, of course. My apologies. I'm just worried. Myriad. Ben. Do me the favor of immediately letting me know if you find anything more. I'm sorry to have rushed in like this. She left just as fast, leaving his god confused as to what had happened while Ben spoke up. So, out of curiosity, how common is it for gods to fall in love with mortals? Huh? Fairly rare, but... No. Yep. You can't know that. I can. Not that I hold anything against Faust's lifestyle, but really? I guess they have similar interests, Ben shrugged. Producing offspring? Producing beast form holders, Ben clarified. Back when she created the original 5, I guess she died fighting the evil god of her world and regretted not being able to make more, and now here's Faust, able to, well, pump out a whole bunch of new ones, easy peasy. Regardless of how he's doing it, you gotta admit he does share her very particular interest. I have no clue how I'm supposed to respond to this. No, actually, I do. So, were you just pretending you couldn't read our minds without us noticing when you practiced before? Not really. I just found a workaround is all. How long ago? Not important. And you've decided to reveal this fact to me now of all times because? Mainly the entertainment factor, if I'm being honest, because man, I was not prepared for finding that in her head. Ugh. Can you at least politely keep whatever you see in anyone else's heads to yourself? Of course. I'm full of manners like that. Ignoring the part where you immediately told me. Well, yeah, ignoring that. Don't mind it though. I trust you to know what you should or shouldn't pass on. Empty skies. How I wish I could feel the same about you. Okay. Well, hold that very rude thought about your beloved apostle for just a minute. Why? Something's coming down below. Looks like I'm going to have to handle it. The others around the campfire began to stand as the sounds of crashing came through the forest. Warnings ready to be shouted on their lips before Ben waved them down. Stop. It's not what you think. Still too far to connect to them to read their mind, but that didn't matter. He had his soul sight and his sacrilege, both not limited by a mere few meters of range that told him all he needed to know about what was coming as a mass of flesh and bones threw itself into the clearing, shape warping back to a young woman as she landed by his side. Number 2. I thought I smelled you. What are you doing out here? Abel laughed while slapping his back. Miss having me around that much? Ha, not exactly, Abel. I ended up out here for the same reason as you. I was sent to look for Faust. What? She asked, her happy expression instantly changing to a scowl. What the hell? Was I not good enough for the gods when they already went and sent my butt out here? A good question. Why were we sent when she was already sent off to handle it? The part of him still within his god's realm asked. And why weren't we at least told to meet up? They said you stopped to eat too much, he told her bluntly, getting to see her expression change once more from her scowl to guilt and embarrassment. I mean, I was just a little snackish is all. It's fine. Faust's goddess is pretty worried about him. And if he dies, then she'll know exactly where he is, but I don't see why they're so worried. He's not so weak. No. But the fact that he's missing is still a pretty bad sign. Okay. But I'm doing it still. I've got his scent. I'll find him. Realistically, she's probably going to be better than any of our current trackers, and I'll be able to keep her on task. Okay, well, want to stick with us then? He asked her, nodding the direction they were following. We're resting for the night, continuing on tomorrow. Could definitely use a hand. I'd feel a lot safer with you too. Sure, she agreed, instantly invested for the bit of faith he was showing in her. But if you're going that way, you're wasting your time. He circles back. Wait, what? Yeah, he fought something in a swamp, and from the bits I found, it looks like he won. Not taking the exact same way back, but he's got the general direction. Yeah, okay. I'll get you to show us in the morning, he told her, even as he grappled with what she'd said. He won? Did he find the thing he was hunting and kill it? Then why's he gone no contact? Why's he turned back? I've been operating on the assumption that since I couldn't control him that nothing else would be able to. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe what he killed wasn't the thing he was hunting but something else under its control, and now he's under its thrall too. God, it's obvious I'm missing something. I just really don't want it to be another demon with mind control. Whatever the truth might have been, Abel's presence created options that he hadn't previously had that could hopefully speed up their journey to find him. They could figure out the rest when they did. But I will need to tell the rest of them in the morning. For now, though, the narrative has been taken without authorization. If you see it on Amazon, report the incident. He took off his necklace and handed it to Abel, watching her look at it in curiosity before he clarified. Job Crystal, you saw me using it before. You should be done yours, right? Right? She jumped, brightening up as she did. Fantastic work with that. I appreciate the hand. No worries. In exchange, you mind if I peek a bit? Go for it. He looked in her mind as she took the crystal, seeing what options presented themselves considering her unusual skill list, and wasn't disappointed by the selection. A good 10 he'd never heard of before and plenty more he had. He would have been curious to see how many of them might have turned out for her, but already knew what she was going to take, not needing to hear as she said it. I want Queen of Weeping. He heard as the system gave her massive bonuses to that particular attribute, and while he was sure that would have been enough to leave her practically glowing, what really set her off was what came with it. A new skill she'd hoped for but hadn't actually expected, gaining Weeping Enhancement. I wonder if her primordial corpse fragment improved her odds of getting a skill like that or if it was a coincidence. He pondered while doing his best to keep her from actively cheering out of consideration for those sleeping around them. Either way, some excellent luck for her, with her instantly using the very attribute it enhanced to improve it. The only one like it in the world, her weeping both created and stored tears, and she let herself use them freely, immediately setting off a chain of new notifications in her head as she brought it from the Zeroth level to the 9th and looked all of the smugger for it. I suppose congratulations are in order. That just went super well for you. Hell yeah, it did. I continue to stand above the world, crushing everyone else underfoot. Oh man, I wonder if changing jobs and getting this skill is going to improve how much I can get. And I mean, I can smell the amount I would have been able to get from you has already grown, but you really should still give me a taste just to see. Whatever change you think you can smell in me, do me a favor and ignore it, please? Nope. You get another 3rd-tier skill, she asked, paying no mind to the other for there, who'd heard her casually drop the word another, as if such an idea wouldn't be ridiculous. You were already smelling among the best, but now dash. No, I just leveled a bunch of my 2nd-tier skills, he said, trying to play it off the best he could since she was still unaware of his sacrilege along with the levels he'd gotten to it. Even if that concession had left those he was sitting with aware that not only did he have multiple 2nd-tier skills still despite but having reached the 3rd tier, he'd also recently leveled them. I'm sure I'd change what you get a bit, but if you can find me a demon out here, then I can give you a way to check how you've changed. You just need to bring it back alive. Instantly she was sniffing at the air, only to deflate when she found nothing nearby despite her heightened senses, leaving him to chuckle while he ruffled her hair. Condemning a demon had been an option, ripping its soul from its body and then filling the empty shell with quacks to see how that changed things, but it seemed she wasn't going to get to enjoy that, at least not that night, even if that didn't stop her from trying. Well, even if I can't tell for sure with you, you could at least give me a little taste, right? You've got to be a little curious too, don't you? I'll give you a cup in the morning so long as you don't wake anyone tonight, he told her, willing to compromise that much and practically witnessing as she resolved to lower her volume just a bit. I'd prefer to have Thera awake and well-rested to heal me. Before that, though, I'd strongly recommend awakening your weeping enhancement. Trust me, an awakened attribute enhancement is nothing compared to one at the 1st tier. The difference in growth is insane. Ugh. I believe it, but I can already tell that I'm short, she groaned. Awakening feels like it costs more than leveling an awakened skill from the Zeroth level. This is crap. Ha, it's a bit of a hump, but if you get it, then it will be worth it. Who knows, maybe awakening it will even help me out. We do have our deal, remember? Yeah, if I can then you're getting weeping, but don't go expecting me to die first. Odds are way better it ends up with your next of kin. That works for me too. Then let's see. For now, do you need sleep? Nah. I've got a good few days before I'm going to need any rest. I'll hang out. Okay, that makes things significantly easier. The rest of you can turn in now, he told the adventurers with him. This is Abel, a fellow 3rd tier. Don't worry about waking anyone to replace you. The 2 of us can be on watch. It's better for you all to be rested. You sure? Wash asked, eyeing Abel as he did. We don't want to slack off. With her here, we should have a significantly faster time finding Faust. I'd rather you all be rested for however that turns out. We'll be fine, so get some sleep. Considering they were being offered the chance to rest, none wanted to argue any more than that, and saying good night, the 4 slipped away to their tents, leaving the 2 of them to pass the time until morning when they'd need to begin their search anew.